The grand annual tournament at Canaan Academy had finally reached its absolute climax. Mason had forcefully broken through to the high soul realm by brutally draining the life force of others. He stood proudly in the center of the dusty arena, arrogantly shouting out his challenge at Ethan. Brenda, who had held the undisputed #1 rank on the leaderboard, couldn't stand his arrogance. She bravely stepped up to the plate, determined to teach this lunatic a lesson on behalf of Ethan. But Mason's newly acquired powers were far too bizarre, twisted, and completely unnatural. With a single devastating strike of his dark blood magic, he severely wounded Brenda, sending her crashing down. He then brutally ripped the sacred chaos sword core right out of her body, stealing her life work. By force, he manipulated the ancient leaderboard stone, claiming the legendary top spot for himself. Mason let out a psychotic grin, stepping forward to completely absorb Brenda's remaining life force. Right at that critical, split second of life and death, a blinding white figure flashed across the arena. A powerful concentrated blast of pure energy forced Mason back, and Brenda was swept up securely. Ethan had finally arrived on the battlefield right on time. Seeing Ethan stand before him, Mason didn't show a single hint of fear or hesitation. Instead, his face twisted with rage as he started listing every single old grudge he had against Ethan. He brought up the stolen resources and how he was kicked out of the academy like a dog. He swore a blood oath to wash away all his past humiliation with Ethan's fresh blood today. Faced with this pathetic, barking clown, Ethan didn't even waste a single breath to reply. He calmly drew his glowing divine sword, which immediately radiated an overwhelming, suffocating pressure. The sheer, crushing weight of the sword's energy left the entire audience completely speechless. Piper, who was standing close by on the stage, felt her knees go weak from the pure terror. Mason completely lost his mind with jealousy, pointing his shaking finger and accusing Ethan of cheating. He screamed that Ethan was a fraud who only relied on his family's ancient inherited treasures to win. Piper, who had always unfairly favored Mason, tried to guilt trip Ethan from a moral high ground. She yelled across the field, telling Ethan to drop his divine sword if he was a real man. She demanded that he engage in a quote Zan unquote fair hand Zen to Zan hand fight with Mason. Ethan remained totally unfazed and bored by their desperate hysterical shouting. He actually let out a massive, disrespectful yawn right in front of the entire crowd. He coldly told them to hurry up and attack, rather than wasting another second of his valuable time. Completely pushed over the edge, Mason roared at the top of his lungs and launched a furious assault. But his grand dramatic confidence lasted for less than 3 short seconds. Ethan casually swung his blade, unleashing a simple wave of energy that completely overpowered Mason instantly. The blow sent the unstoppable Mason crashing face first into the dirt, spitting blood uncontrollably. Refusing to accept his miserable defeat, Mason scrambled back to his feet hysterically. He intentionally burned his own life force, sacrificing his blood to unleash 80% of his dark magic. A thick, suffocating cloud of black mist swarmed toward Ethan in a desperate suicidal strike, but against absolute crushing power, flashy and desperate moves are completely useless. Ethan countered with a basic, effortless strike, knocking him flying across the arena once again. Right at that exact moment, the system's clear metallic chime rang out inside Ethan's mind. Congratulations, you have successfully crushed the main character and stolen Sen-10 destiny points. To make things even sweeter, Ethan instantly claimed a legendary system prize, the 7 Treasures Pagoda. On the blood-stained ground, Mason saw his ultimate moves failing over and over again. His mental state completely broke down, plunging his mind into a state of absolute madness. Like a rabid street dog backed into a corner, he let out one final desperate roar. He triggered every single ounce of his forbidden magic, swearing to swallow Ethan's soul and flesh alive. Piper was screaming her lungs out from the sidelines, cheering him on like a crazy fanatic. Ethan just sneered with absolute disdain, whispering 2 simple words, amateur hour. He calmly raised his hand, summoning the newly acquired 7 Treasures Pagoda into the air. The tiny, intricate pagoda immediately unleashed a blinding, magnificent golden barrier. It completely purified and melted away the dark mist and toxic energy filling the stadium. The violent, explosive shockwave ricocheted backward, instantly shattering every single vein in Mason's body. The system chimed once more, granting Ethan an additional RD-10 destiny points for the clean sweep. With this massive influx of power, Ethan's cultivation naturally soared directly into the mid-Zan tier divine realm. He also unlocked a reality Zan bending, casualty Zan altering treasure, the soul Zan splitting mirror. The function of this rare artifact was incredibly simple, yet completely overpowered. It could separate any target's hidden soul clone, turning it into a completely independent being. The newly formed clone would keep half the original power while being 100% loyal to Ethan. Without wasting a single moment, Ethan cast the ancient spell directly on the mirror. He forcefully ripped out out Empress Julia's hidden soul clone that had been lurking in the shadows. The newly born clone stood up, possessing a breathtakingly beautiful appearance. She instantly displayed an incredibly terrifying high tier level of raw power. She dropped to her knees respectfully before Ethan, submitting to her new master completely. To prevent the real Empress far away from ever regaining her peak strength, Ethan acted with cold calculation. He ordered the beautiful clone to find a highly secure, untraceable hiding spot immediately. This brilliant move secretly applied a permanent fatal debuff to his ultimate enemy. Back on the arena floor, Mason was now a completely broken, paralyzed man in deep despair. With his last bit of strength, he rubbed the mysterious, ancient black ring on his trembling finger. He screamed desperately into the void, begging for help from Vance, the powerful spirit sealed inside. The old spirit let out a heavy sigh, realizing he had to make a devastating final sacrifice. He flying through the air like a broken kite, crashing down into a puddle of his own blood. Mason had lost absolutely everything today, including his pride and his entire future. The giant, ancient leaderboard stone flashed with a brilliant, blinding golden light. Ethan's name now sat permanently and unshackably at the absolute #1 spot. Brenda cheered excitedly from the crowd, completely transforming into his #1 fangirl. Piper, who had been incredibly loud and arrogant just moments ago, was completely paralyzed with fear. She stood frozen with fury. A massive, suffocating cloud of toxic purple energy completely blocked out the afternoon sun. She scoffed with pure rage, openly refusing to accept the official results of the tournament. She claimed Ethan cheated and rigged the match by using an external family's inherited divine sword. She extended a giant shadowy hand that covered the sky, threatening to crush Ethan into dust on the spot. Seeing their powerful master back them up, Mason and Piper instantly grew bold and arrogant again. Like barking dogs backed by a fierce owner, they started throwing nasty insults at Ethan once more. Faced with the life-threatening, overwhelming pressure of a peak Empress, Ethan didn't even take a step back. Instead, he looked her dead in the eye, stood tall, and let out a cold, mocking laugh. He calmly stated to the entire world that a powerful family background was part of his actual strength. Then, Ethan openly ridiculed the Supreme Empress right in front of the massive crowd. He questioned how a world's famous legendary elite could be so incredibly shameless and desperate, interfering in a junior academy trial. "Aren't you afraid of becoming a global laughingstock?" The arrogant Empress snapped back with fury. "My power is the only law and rule in this world." Seeing that she had completely discarded all her honor, Ethan's smile vanished from his face. If she wanted to compare backers and family trees, let's see whose family is truly invincible. Ethan smirked and immediately activated the hidden, ancient power of the Grand House of Ethan. Suddenly, the earth began to quake violently, and the sky looked as if it were falling apart. Multiple terrifying legendary ancestors of his family emerged from the deep void one by one. Old masters who had been dead to the world for centuries stepped out into the blinding light. Their combined, majestic pressure instantly tore the Empress's purple energy cloud to absolute shreds. Uncle Caleb, the top powerhouse of the family's active guard, took a massive step forward. His glowing golden eyes locked onto Julia from across the ruined courtyard. He demanded with a voice of thunder, "Who dares try to harm the golden child of our ancient family?" Feeling the suffocating godsend-like pressure of multiple supreme ancestors, the crowd went into deep panic. Piper was scared completely out of her mind, her soul almost leaving her trembling body. No one ever expected the usually low-key quiet Ethan to have such a terrifying monster backing him. Empress Julia, who was incredibly arrogant just a moment ago, froze solid in her tracks. The smug, regal look on her face instantly transformed into pure, unadulterated terror. Faced with absolute devastating military suppression, she had no choice but to swallow her pride. She backed down on the spot, officially admitting that Ethan won the entire tournament fairly. She turned around, waving her long sleeve to leave with her remaining, heavily defeated crew. But it is always easy to pick a fight, and a whole lot harder to get out of one. Now that the tables were completely turned, Ethan wasn't about to let her walk away so easily. He slowly stepped forward, raising his hand to block the Supreme Empress's path out. With an innocent, harmless, and completely polite smile on his face, he spoke up. "I had to call out multiple legendary ancestors from their deep sleep just to protect my own life. The appearance fee for this level of ancient power is an absolute astronomical number. I certainly can't afford it alone, so I think you should help me foot the bill. The exact price tag. Exactly 200 million top-10 tier priceless spirit stones." Hearing that insane number, the Empress and Piper almost threw up blood from pure frustration. They cursed Ethan openly, calling it literal highway robbery, extortion, and blackmail. But Ethan's friendly smile vanished in a split second, his gaze turning deadly and sharp. He dropped the most brutal threat possible in the gentlest, smoothest tone you could imagine. "If you don't settle this bill right here today, none of you are leaving this academy alive." When you are standing under someone else's roof, you have no Ethan's head. Because he perfectly suppressed the Empress, Mason, and Piper, he gained a massive wave of points. The system handed out a shocking reward, instantly pushing his personal cultivation up a whole rank. He also received a rare breakthrough pill and a divine mirror that could block a max DN tier strike. With the massive crisis fully resolved, the family ancestors highly praised Ethan's brilliant performance. They all agreed that he truly carried the proud, fierce, and unyielding spirit of their bloodline. Then, the entire powerful group marched back to the Grand Family estate together in victory. The very second he hit his private locked chamber, Ethan couldn't wait any longer to open his rewards. He pulled out the Shining Sevens and cleft mystical heart he had won from the Academy tournament. He presented the legendary pulsing artifact respectfully to his father with both hands. His father stared at the legendary treasure radiating endless, magnificent, divine light into the room. His old hands shook with intense, overwhelming excitement as he carefully took it from his son. He swallowed the artifact without a single hint of hesitation, and began to process the massive energy, wrapped in a brilliant blinding vortex of golden light. His 10-Zan-year bottleneck shattered like thin paper. He successfully broke through to the elite realm, boosting the family's total strength significantly. Next, the loyal and dutiful Ethan turned around to face his elderly great Zan grandpa Silas. He pulled out the newly rewarded Hide Zan Tier breakthrough pill and handed it over with deep respect. Silas didn't hesitate for a second, laughing out loud as he accepted the divine, glowing pill. He immediately sat down on the stone floor to process the overwhelming energy vortex around him. With a blinding, deafening flash of golden light, he successfully crossed the impossible divine gap. He safely entered the ultimate, elite realm that countless cultivators can only dream of reaching. Seeing the family's top combat power break through in a matter of mere minutes, Ethan smiled warmly. He playfully bowed to Uncle Caleb, who was already an incredibly powerful, legendary figure. He joked that he didn't have an overpowered treasure to boost Caleb to the final god Zan-like realm just yet. Caleb laughed heartily, waving his hand dismissively, saying he was already beyond satisfied with the boys. Looking at his newly empowered invincible family, Ethan stared out the window into the endless void. Since his father and great Zan grandpa had broken their limits with his direct help, the system was ready. The system's hidden, built Zandin Yulbanin X multiplier mechanic was about to trigger its feedback loop. He couldn't help but wonder what kind of terrifying, world-shaking surprise it would bring to the universe. Ethan had fully awakened the legendary Forbidden Villain Destiny system. As long as he suppressed, humiliated, or stole from the main characters, he got a Yo-Yo Leaning X return on investment. Right on cue, the very first massive wave of system rewards arrived safely in his inventory. He unlocked a supreme, ancient technique that gave his special abilities infinite upgrade potential over time. On top of that, 1 billion top Zan tier, priceless spirit stones were added to his personal vault. He also gained a Soul Zan crushing roar technique and an incredibly rare Hide Zan tier breakthrough pill. Inside the massive family meeting hall, Ethan listened to Uncle Caleb analyze the unfolding war. The Beast Army was gathering in massive numbers, and the battle at Crimson Pass was about to explode. In the original tragic timeline of the world, Piper would betray Caleb's location to the enemy forces. This betrayal would lead to a devastating ambush, causing the proud family to fall from grace permanently. But this time around, with the almighty system on his side, Ethan would never let history repeat itself. The very moment he walked out the front gates of the estate, Julia and Mason set a deadly ambush. They wanted to use sheer numbers in a surprise attack to eliminate Ethan once and for all. But Ethan was no longer the weak, defenseless target they used to exploit in the past. He triggered a massive system multiplier countered Zan attack right before their eyes. He unlocked a supreme mental defense mechanism, making his mind completely immune to psychological attacks. He even forcefully stole their own destined, powerful technique right out of their hands during the fight. Armed with his upgraded abilities, Ethan left Mason and Julia completely helpless and broken on the field. Mason was beaten so brutally that he honestly began to question his entire existence and purpose. On the other side of the region, the deeply scheming Julia began plotting her next grand move. She wanted to trigger a massive bloody war, early as a perfect distraction for her goals. Her ultimate goal was to steal a legendary artifact that could restore her peak, God Zan-like power. To hide her true, wicked intent, she proposed a fake plan at the Grand Sevens Insect Council meeting. She highly suggested sending an elite young strike team directly into the dangerous Shadow Realm. Ethan saw right through her lies. He knew this was never an intelligence or scouting mission. This was simply Julia's private, illegal treasure hunt, and he was fully prepared to ruin it for her. Ethan volunteered to join the team, intending to steal her ultimate destiny at the perfect moment. When the two rival sides clashed again, Ethan proudly showcased his newly gained elite rank. Right in front of Julia's face, he beat Mason until the boy was spitting blood all over the floor. Julia completely panicked, never expecting this young junior to become the biggest obstacle in her life. Ethan watched her struggle coldly, knowing the real battle for absolute dominance had just begun. The grand curtains rose, and the villain's dark plot was quietly set in motion behind closed doors. Inside a dark, sinister hall, Julia handed a deadly mind, Zan-controlling parasite to Mason and Piper. Her goal was terrifyingly simple. Use the bug to completely brainwash Ethan during the dangerous mission. They wanted to steal his special physique, his bloodline, and every single treasure he owned. Julia delivered a chilling, cold warning. Anyone who screws up my grand plan will suffer a fate worse than death. Meanwhile, back in the main hall of the family estate, Caleb was meeting privately with Ethan. Hearing that Ethan was leading the young team to the Shadow Realm, Caleb offered some legendary defensive gear. Suddenly, Ethan's aggressive uncle burst into the room with a large group of angry elders behind him. The uncle shouted with fury, warning them that Julia was clearly setting a trap for the family. He claimed this mission was nothing but an illegal plot to get Ethan killed by enemy forces. Faced with the elders' heavy protests, Ethan argued back with absolute unyielding confidence. He admitted the Shadow Realm was a death trap, but it also held massive, God-tier opportunities. This fight wasn't just for personal honor, it was for the survival and glory of the entire family line. He promised his worried uncle that he would return victorious, no matter what stood in his way. Julia watched him from her high seat with a fake smile, laughing maliciously inside her own head. "You're walking straight into the jaws of hell, Ethan. There is no coming back for you now." Right at that dramatic moment, a powerful, unexpected ally stepped forward to change the game. Brenda walked gracefully into the main hall, announcing she was joining the elite strike team. She vowed a solemn oath to stand firmly by Ethan's side throughout the entire dangerous journey. Ethan, deeply worried for her safety, tried to convince her to stay behind at the secure academy. But Brenda was no longer a helpless, fragile girl looking for a strong bodyguard to protect her. She unleashed a supreme, magnificent sword technique on the spot, showing off her elite rank to the elders. The sudden, breathtaking display of power shocked Ethan and left Julia completely stunned in her seat. An overwhelming wave of greed flared up in Julia's heart as she saw how many treasures Ethan possessed. It doesn't matter how strong they think they are. Once they enter the Shadow Realm, everything belongs to me. Seeing Brenda's absolute determination, Ethan told her to stay glued to his side no matter what happened. Julia played along with the mood, announcing Mason and Piper would join the squad as well for balance. Ethan looked at the deceitful, smiling crowd, his eyes turning as cold as Arctic ice. All our old beefs and unpaid debts will be settled permanently on this little trip. The very moment Julia returned to her private back hall, Mason and Piper cornered her anxiously. Mason was terrified that their grand plan would fail completely if Ethan decided to back out last minute. Piper looked completely malicious and crazed, claiming she couldn't sleep a wink until Ethan was dead. Julia calmed their nerves, revealing the good news that Ethan had been named the official team captain. Hearing this perfect setup, Mason let out a loud, arrogant, and psychotic laugh into the empty room. In his twisted eyes, Ethan was already a walking corpse, a prime target waiting to be harvested. He planned to kill Ethan, steal his special physique, and take Brenda's sacred sword core for himself. To guarantee absolute success, Julia handed Mason a legendary, forbidden trap array formation map. This forbidden trap could easily take down targets 2 whole ranks higher than the user himself. Mason accepted the priceless prize like a hungry wolf, bowing down in deep wicked gratitude. The scene shifted back to a secret, heavily fortified room where Caleb led Ethan privately. To guarantee Ethan's survival on this dangerous mission, Caleb went all out, sparing no family resources. He brought out the ultimate guarded family heirloom, the legendary primal earth armor, forged from rare cosmic metal and ancient starred sandstone. Its defense could block 10 max Dan-tier elite attacks easily. Ethan looked completely shocked on the outside, but deep inside his mind, he was throwing a party. Then, Caleb pulled out an even wilder, more game Zan-breaking item, the 9 Zan Cycle Divine Pill. Each pill advanced his physique by a mile, and completing the full cycle gave power to challenge gods. The very moment Ethan took the 3 glowing pills into his hand, the gears of fate turned rapidly. The system's familiar, mechanical voice echoed clearly and sharply. Inside his mind, congratulations. You have successfully stolen a major late Zan game main character destiny from Mason. You have drained Mason of another Arsen Futa valuable destiny points. The system handed out massive rewards, instantly granting him Grandmaster status in ancient arrays. Ethan was absolutely thrilled. The vault holding the legendary artifact was locked by a God Zan tier array. This newly gained system knowledge was the literal perfect skeleton key to unlocking that vault. Inside the quiet chamber, Caleb warned Ethan that the upcoming trip was a literal life Zan or Zan death gamble. The armor and pills were specifically meant to keep him alive through his next major breakthrough. He reminded the boy that their ancient family line never under any circumstance abandons their own kin. Ethan felt a massive wave of genuine warmth in his chest, bowing deeply in true respect to his elder. Caleb strictly warned him that each pill required peak, brutal physical training to fully process the energy. Otherwise, the sheer explosive cosmic energy would cause his physical body to burst into pieces. Next, Caleb brought out a second priceless treasure, the legendary Tome of All Beasts. Once bonded directly to the user's soul, it instantly revealed every single hidden weakness of monsters. Caleb had used this exact book to conquer and tame the Shadow Realm back in his historical glory days. Ethan took the ancient book carefully, knowing his survival rate just shot up significantly. Finally, Caleb produced a third priceless item, the Supreme Universal Array Manual. It held the most elite guarded formations for trapping, killing, and escaping from enemy forces. Caleb honestly thought it would take Ethan decades of hard study to understand even a fraction of it. He had absolutely no idea that Ethan was already an overpowered system Zan-level array god. For Ethan, fully mastering these simple setups would take about 3 days max. It was the ultimate convenience, and Ethan thanked Caleb heavily from the bottom of his heart. A few days later, Ethan snapped his eyes open inside the locked, heavily fortified training room. With the primal earth armor stabilizing his vitals, he successfully swallowed the first divine pill. A massive, violent explosion of golden light completely consumed his entire physical body. With a loud, deafening boom, his special physique successfully completed its first major evolution cycle. He felt a massive, rushing wave of raw cosmic power course through his veins, doubling his strength. He began to imagine how completely invincible he would be once all 9 cycles were fully finished. Hyped up by his rapid progress, Ethan snapped his fingers, summoning Great Zan Grandpa Silas to the room. Faced with a friendly sparring request from the Elite Elder, Ethan unleashed his full, unrestricted power. After a brief Earth Zan shaking and terrifying clash, Silas was forced back several steps across the floor. His old eyes widened in absolute shock and pure disbelief at the young man's terrifying strength. He couldn't believe Ethan became strong enough to threaten a high Zan tier master in a matter of days. Silas laughed proudly into the empty room, realizing no mid-Zan tier cultivator on Earth stood a chance against Ethan. The family had officially raised a true world Zan shaking legend this time around. After the intense spar concluded, Caleb returned to the room to check on his progress. He informed Ethan that the elite strike squad was fully ready to move out immediately. Before they departed the estate, Caleb offered one last crucial piece of battlefield combat advice. He reminded him that arrays are highly versatile and can easily take down much stronger foes if used right. Ethan nodded politely and agreed on the outside, but inside his mind he was scoffing at them. Once they crossed the dangerous border, he would show everyone who the real predator was. After Caleb left the room, Ethan used his last free moments to fully bond the books to his soul. He mastered every lethal setup and built a massive hidden energy pool right inside his room. The ambient energy concentration inside the chamber instantly shot up 10 times over the baseline. Feeding hungrily on this massive energy source, Ethan swallowed the second pill for his final breakthrough push. Finally, the fateful moment of truth arrived under the bloody setting desert sun. The elite teams chosen from the 7 high sects lined up across the main plaza of the academy. Julia completely hid her usual malicious nature, standing tall with a dead serious expression on her face. She announced that the core mission was to gather critical intel on the enemy beast army's movements. She formally named Ethan as the Grand Team Captain, giving him full unrestricted command over everyone. Anyone who dares to disobey his direct orders will face immediate execution under strict military law. Standing in the back of the line, Mason kept his head low, his eyes burning with pure, unadulterated malice. He stared intensely at Ethan's back, cursing violently and screaming in his own dark mind. Once we cross over the border, I'll use the forbidden trap to crush every single bone in your body. Piper stood quietly beside him, looking cold and fully ready to deploy her mind, Zen control parasite bug. The villain's murderous, toxic intent was becoming almost impossible to hide from the public. The highly observant Brenda quickly noticed their nasty glares and slipped close to Ethan's side. She whispered nervously into his ear, telling him to stay on absolute high alert around those two. Faced with her genuine concern, Ethan just let out a relaxed, highly confident laugh. He assured her they were nothing but cheap clowns whose weak plots couldn't even scratch his armor. Julia tossed the golden captain's token across the plaza, and Ethan caught it cleanly in the air. He raised the heavy token high above his head, shouting the final command to march. Elite squad, on my official mark, move out. With mixed agendas, hidden plots, and toxic betrayal, the team marched forward into the dangerous desert night. The howling wind blew violently as the elite squad rushed through the massive desert sandstorm. They finally halted on a barren rocky hill overlooking the vast dark landscape ahead. Ethan stood tall on the ridge, staring out into the distance as old memories flooded his mind. He knew the massive iron fortress ahead was Crimson Pass, the ultimate border shield for humanity. In the original, tragic timeline of the world, his family's destruction started right here when this pass fell. Just then, General Drake approached the group with a squad of heavily armed battle-worn soldiers. He coldly delivered the strict orders passed down directly from the 7 high sects leaders. The strike team was strictly required to camp inside the fortress for exactly 3 full days. They had to wait for the main war to officially kick off before an escort took them across the border. Anxious to hunt for the legendary treasures, Mason couldn't handle wasting 3 whole days in a fort. He stepped forward aggressively, demanding an immediate explanation for the unnecessary delay. But General Drake wasn't about to tolerate disrespectful attitude from a young brat. He rested his heavy hand on his sword hilt, staring Mason down with a deadly icy gaze. Military law here is absolute. Follow my orders or pack your bags and go home right now. Mason and Piper exchanged deeply frustrated looks, forcing themselves to swallow their intense rage. General Drake scoffed coldly, turning around to invite the rest of the elite squad inside the gates. Ethan watched the two traitors sneak away into the shadows, his eyes turning dangerous and sharp. Thanks to his system knowledge, he knew exactly what their wicked minds were planning tonight. Tonight, these two traitors would sneak the squad out early, opening the gates and causing the fort to fall. Ethan made a silent, deadly promise to act as their personal executioner tonight in the dark. He would completely crush these two snakes before they could even start their grand betrayal. Tonight, Crimson Pass was going to turn into an absolute unforgettable bloodbath. The toxic tension on the rocky clearing was thick enough to cut with a sharp knife. Ethan and Brenda found themselves completely surrounded by hostile, armed border forces. Faced with General Drake's aggressive threats, Ethan openly stated his ultimate plan to everyone. He wanted to utilize the Shadow Realm's rare resources to break free from their political control. However, Drake tried to intimidate them by bringing up the massive backing of the High Sex. He insisted they follow the traditional rigid protocol and stay in line like good little soldiers. But Ethan didn't give a single damn about their rigid rules, warnings, or political empty threats. To him, protocols were static and dead, but living people had to adapt and conquer to survive. They arrived beneath the massive western gate, and the conflict exploded instantly into violence. Faced with the general's loud accusations of treason, Ethan activated his villain system. With a single devastating counter-Zan strike, he completely shattered Drake's mental defense and pride. He successfully drained a whopping Wu-Chain Destiny points directly from the trembling general. He also unlocked a high Xantier stealth charm that could hide his presence from elite masters. Drake was completely paralyzed with fear, never expecting Ethan to possess such lethal methods. Before anyone could even process what happened, Empress Julia descended with God Zan-like power. As an elite master of the highest realm, her mere arrival shook the entire desert field to its core. With a casual, lazy wave of her hand, she blasted the massive iron western gate to absolute pieces. Julia bragged arrogantly from above, looking down at the terrified, kneeling crowd below. It is time for you pathetic insects to witness the true, unrestricted wrath of an empress. Everyone in the crowd assumed Ethan was a dead man walking against her legendary power, but no one knew Ethan had secretly laid out one of the 10 deadliest trap arrays in existence. The exact moment Julia launched her full Zan power lethal strike, the hidden trap triggered with a roar. Ethan countered instantly, inflicting a devastating bloody injury right back onto the shocked empress. Even if the merge fails, Julia can still force her way to becoming a quasi-Zan god. Her power will far surpass any peak demigod we have ever seen. Our entire race is still hanging by a single thread. Looking at the old man's panic, Ethan's eyes turned hard as iron. He looked at Silas and asked for just a little more time. He promised he would find a way to stop this apocalypse. Silas was deeply moved by the boy's courage and stepping up. He promised to use everything he had to clear the path for him, but the moment Ethan walked out the door, the old man sighed heavily again. He knew Ethan was only a mid-Zan tier grandmaster right now. How could a kid possess the power to change the world like that? He figured Ethan was probably just saying that to make him feel better. The scene shifted, and the fiercely loyal Brenda rushed over to find Ethan. The second they met, she carefully held out a legendary treasure. It was a supreme protective relic given to her by her own grandfather. The item held the absolute full power of a demigod Zan level strike. Brenda didn't have a single selfish thought in her mind. She immediately shoved it into Ethan's hands, telling him to take it. She wanted him to keep it to save his life when the war exploded. Looking at the devoted girl who was risking everything to keep him safe, Ethan felt a massive wave of emotion hit his chest. He cursed his old self for being such a massive jerk to her in the past, but now that he was in control, he would never let her down again. Ethan gently pushed the treasure back, telling her to keep it safe. But Brenda completely refused to take no for an answer. She argued that Mason, Piper, and Julia were all hunting for Ethan. She insisted that he was the one who actually needed the protection. Seeing that he couldn't convince her, Ethan reached out. He firmly and passionately took Brenda's soft hand into his own. He looked her dead in the eye and made a solemn promise right there. He vowed to stop the invasion, protect their people, and make Brenda the happiest woman on the face of the earth. Hearing this romantic confession, Brenda blushed and let out a sweet smile. To prepare for the upcoming massive storm, Ethan went back into isolation alone. He needed to do a full inventory of his remaining cards. Life or death, it all came down to this single move. He opened the system interface, ordering it to activate the lottery feature. But the moment the screen popped up, his smile completely froze on his face. He had accumulated a whopping Sidan Semba Uni Lion Death. Ryan was upstairs closing a multi-billion-dollar deal with a massive political titan. When Haley Harris stepped forward to call her father and have the police raid the building, Avery stopped her. She gently pressed her classmate's hand down and smiled warmly, telling her that the villains were the ones in trouble. She gave her friends a reassuring look, telling them to leave with the police while she handled the rest. Then, she calmly followed the security team upstairs through the tense, suffocating atmosphere. Back in the present moment inside the penthouse office, the villains are sweating bullets. Just as Logan and Oliver realize they are completely trapped, the double doors are violently thrown open. Marcus, the powerful owner of the Vanguard Gym, strides into the room with a booming laugh. He loudly congratulates Logan and Ryan on the spectacular opening night, wishing them massive profits. He walks over to Ryan and announces that he had a bit too much fun gambling at the tables last week. He praises Avery for being incredibly generous and handing him a $10 million loan with zero collateral. He states he refuses to be cheap on opening night, so he personally brought the cash to clear his debt. He throws down a heavy duffel bag containing $13 million in cash, settling the principal and interest on the spot. The scheming Logan instantly seizes this perfect opportunity to save face and de-escalate the situation. He lets out a booming laugh, giving Marcus full respect by converting the entire sum into casino chips for him. Then he turns around and praises Avery heavily, telling the room that she handled the account beautifully. Logan takes back the $10 million principal and hands the $3 million interest straight to Avery as a bonus. He explicitly praises her talent and commends her for running such a tight operation. Avery accepts the cash with a polite, calm smile, completely unfazed by his sudden change of heart. The deadly trap designed to destroy her career was not only completely dismantled, but she also walked away with a massive fortune. But just as the tension clears and the executives prepare for the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Ryan lets out a dark sneer. He slowly steps up to Avery and Zach, a murderous, calculating glint flashing in his eyes. He leans in close and delivers a chilling, low-voiced threat directly to their faces. He tells the two orphans not to get cocky just because they pulled off a clever stunt together today. He reveals that he just found out their estranged older brother hopped on a flight back to the States this morning. He checks his watch and smiles wickedly, telling them their little safe haven is officially gone. The curtains fall on a heavy note of suspense as Avery and Zach stare back at him with icy determination. The battle for the family empire is officially over, but the true hurricane is only just beginning for the three siblings. The scene shifts as Amber designs a massive strategy, advising Oliver to lay low for his own safety. She sets her sights on taking total control of the venue, plotting to seize the operation from the inside. Oliver harbors a few doubts about the plan, but ultimately agrees to cooperate under her intense pressure. To create some noise and set their plan in motion, the duo picks a fight over a lease dispute at a local diner. Amber calls in a squad of heavy enforcers to flex her muscles and completely intimidate the owner. This aggressive display not only crushes the diner owner, but also flushes out the mysterious syndicate backing him. But when the two walk up to the venue with total confidence, the entire situation takes a massive U-turn. Logan suddenly arrives on the scene with an overwhelming, terrifying presence. Instead of being intimidated by Amber's little street tactics, he casually mocks their entire heritage. He exposes the truth that Amber and Oliver are nothing but illegitimate outcasts from their respective families. Logan treats them like cheap pawns on a board, completely beneath his notice. He ruthlessly forces them to play a twisted, dangerous game against each other just for his own amusement. Back inside his private office, Logan tears into Oliver, calling him a useless piece of trash who only brings trouble. Crushed under Logan's absolute authority, Amber and Oliver find themselves trapped in a desperate corner. They have to defend against rival crews while struggling to survive Logan's sadistic game. Logan's pure cruelty pushes the entire operation into chaos, leaving them with no clear way out. Avery has serious guts to stand directly in front of Ryan's crew and announce that the club is open for business. She even boldly declares a 20% discount across the entire floor to win over the gamblers. Seeing the situation spin out of control, Oliver immediately speed dials his boss Logan to come crush her. But Avery completely anticipated his reaction and already accounted for the 30-minute window before Logan arrives. She quickly orders two of her operatives to break into the unmonitored penthouse suite to steal Logan's blackmail files. The moment her crew slips away, Avery goes over the final piece of the strategy with Zach. It turns out she secretly marked the $10 million in cash from Marcus using an invisible UV pen. Avery knows this little trick will only buy them a week before Logan realizes he has been conned. To permanently win this war, they absolutely need her team to secure the hard evidence tonight. A few minutes later, Logan's luxury sedan pulls up to the front entrance of the establishment. The second he steps out, he screams at Oliver for being a useless failure who can't even secure a single room. Oliver immediately deflects the blame, falsely claiming that Avery is staging a hostile takeover. Right on cue, Avery and Zach calmly walk out of the office to meet them without an ounce of fear. When Ryan's family barks insults and calls her a traitor, Avery just lets out a cold laugh. She bluntly states she doesn't care about the club, but came to expose how Ryan's crew is betraying Logan. Ryan's family loses their minds with anger, and Martha steps up to frantically swear her absolute loyalty to Logan. Avery doesn't waste time talking, immediately pulling out the duffel bag of cash delivered by Marcus earlier. Zach shines a UV light across the bills, revealing a hidden tracking stamp glowing brightly on every single note. Avery strikes the final blow, accusing Ryan of using the marked bills to secretly track Logan's illicit smuggling routes. Staring at the undeniable proof, Logan explodes in a fit of pure, unbridled rage, realizing he is completely framed and defamed. A desperate Ryan loses his sanity and lunges straight at Avery. The scene rapidly transitions as a new wave of danger breaches the perimeter. The elite assassin sent by Ryan has smoothly infiltrated the inner corridors of the venue. Instead of running for cover, Avery stands her ground and calls him out by his real name. Facing the arrogant hitman, she breaks down the reality of their situation with a cold, logical lecture. She points out that they are both just disposable corporate puppets being manipulated by Logan and Ryan. She explicitly tells him that even if he executes her tonight, the venue will never belong to him. The only person who wins in that scenario is Logan, who is safely waiting out of sight to take all the credit. The harsh realization completely shifts the assassin's mindset, and he lowers his weapon to talk business. After securing his cooperation, Avery instructs the floor manager to lie to Ryan's crew when they arrive. She tells him to say she was forcefully dragged into the back office by a masked assailant. Sure enough, Ryan and his family stroll into the establishment a short while later with smug grins. Hearing the manager confirm that the contract killer already made his move, the family celebrates wildly. Oliver boasts loudly to his friends, completely convinced that Avery is lying dead in a pool of blood. The entire crew stands outside the office door laughing, completely unaware that they are the true joke of the evening. Finally, the timeline flashes back to the night Avery met with her intelligence operative. The agent successfully hands over an encrypted flash drive containing Walter Vance's financial data from the last decade. Avery maintains a strict timeline, giving her hackers exactly 3 days to crack the security encryption. Anticipating a violent retaliation from Ryan's crew, she dispatches a security team to guard her mother at the clinic. Before they part ways, Zach asks how she knew Ryan would take the bait so easily. Avery just lets out a confident smile, noting that everything has gone exactly according to her master design. A high-stakes gambling conflict triggers a massive debt crisis at the Vanguard gym. Julian storms into the facility with a squad of heavy enforcers, demanding immediate payment from Marcus. As the pressure mounts, Marcus is backed into a corner and forced to sign a predatory corporate agreement. What should have been a standard financial dispute quickly spins out of control when his daughter Maya gets involved. A carefully orchestrated car crash leaves Maya in a severe coma, facing a bleak medical prognosis. While the public assumes it was just a tragic accident, Julian makes a sinister appearance at the hospital ward. He tries to take control of the medical facility while aggressively covering up his tracks to avoid suspicion. Julian thinks he is completely untouchable, unaware that Maya had already set a trap before losing consciousness. Just as Julian believes he has secured absolute victory, the counterstrike hits him like a freight train. Inside an abandoned warehouse, a fully recovered Maya uses ruthless methods to break the getaway driver. She forces him to confess that the entire hit and run was a planned contract job paid for by Julian. Armed with ironclad forensic evidence, Maya completely dismantles the entire criminal conspiracy. The high-stakes game of debt and corporate sabotage finally concludes with Maya holding all the cards. It all started when Cole shamelessly brought his pregnant mistress, Chloe, straight into the family estate. He had this fake, arrogant smirk on his face, trying to give his wife, Serena, a twisted, quote-unquote, giant surprise. Sitting in the living room, his mother, Victoria, was shaking with pure, unadulterated rage at the utterly ridiculous scene. She pointed a finger right at Cole's face, blasting her own son for having absolutely no morals and no shame. Serena, who was supposed to be completely devastated and left in the dark, acted incredibly calm husband with an icy glare. Her voice was flat, detached, and carried an unyielding authority as she laid down her final, non-negotiable terms. We are getting a divorce right here, right now, and there is absolutely no room for discussion, period. And you, Cole, the man who destroyed this family, are walking out of this marriage with absolutely nothing to your name. The once sweet, submissive housewife who only managed the estate was now standing her ground like a wall of solid iron. Cole's golden dream of staying rich and climbing the social ladder was completely collapsing under her brilliant calculation. What looked to them like a regular family confrontation was actually a lethal, perfectly timed trap. Dressed in a sharp, all-black outfit, Serena cut straight to the chase about the asset liquidation and split. Victoria tried to defend her son at first, arguing that he was the successful businessman who kept the house running. But Serena threw down the cold, hard legal deed papers onto the mahogany coffee table immediately. The multi-million-dollar luxury villa bought in full cash before the marriage, a high-end sports car for her 30th birthday. Every single piece of prime real estate and asset was registered solely and legally under Serena's name alone. Victoria's face turned pale as sheets, but Serena just sneered and dropped an even thicker, more terrifying stack of documents. It was Cole's private bank statements showing he used corporate money to gamble away millions at VIP tables in Las Vegas, along with a signed high-stakes guarantee agreement that left him personally backbacked with a $5 million debt. Right on cue, a heavy, thunderous knock echoed through the quiet halls at the front door. Multiple armed police officers and financial detectives walked straight into the living room, flashing an arrest warrant. They cuffed the shocked, face-pale Cole and prepared to drag him away into custody. Faced with the sudden handcuffs and criminal charges, the scheming husband completely broke down, collapsing onto the floor. Chloe, who thought she could use her pregnancy to secure a wealthy lifestyle and climb the ladder, panicked and lost her mind. Watching the chaotic, fragile family completely fall apart, Serena didn't stop moving her pieces for a single second. She stated coldly that the mansion was tied to the debt and would be officially listed on the market tonight. Every single dollar from the sale would go directly to cover the massive debt hole Cole had dug for himself. As for the mother and the mistress, they could crash on the property like squatters temporarily until the final closing date. Chloe dropped straight to her knees on the floor, begging for mercy through her tears, but Serena showed zero pity. She ruthlessly ripped away the very last veil of decency from this fake broken marriage, the cheating husband, the greedy mistress. The whole thing was nothing but a toxic game of pure, dirty ambition. Victoria and Chloe finally woke up from their delusion, staring at the empty space in shock. They realized they were just mindless, disposable pawns used in Serena's master plan for absolute revenge. Serena looked down at the two pathetic, kneeling women with a dead serious calm and detached gaze. She didn't waste another breath or leave another word. She turned around and walked out the door. This miserable, toxic marriage was officially completely dead, and justice was finally being served. Faced with Chloe's desperate, hysterical screaming behind her, Serena stopped her tracks, turned, and stared down. Chloe was weeping hysterically, crying out that she was only 24 and a bastard child would ruin her entire life. She tried to crawl forward to grab Serena's dress, begging on her knees for some cash to get a private abortion. But Serena didn't show an ounce of human sympathy, her eyes cutting through the girl like cold razor blades. Why the hell should I ever help you? Give me one good reason. Just a few short hours ago, you stood in my house, trying to use this exact kid to completely destroy my life. And now that your little plan failed, you want me to pay to help you erase your own mistake? The bad blood, resentment, and hatred between these two women ran way deeper than anyone could ever see. Serena rejected Chloe without a single shred of hesitation, turning her back and walking out into the chilly night. Getting into her car, she immediately dialed her own father, letting out a long, relieved breath into the dark. "Dad, it is over. The massive weight I've carried on my chest for 5 long years is finally gone." Serena drove back to her family's private luxury estate, where her wealthy parents were waiting up anxiously for her. The second she walked through the grand front doors safe and sound, they finally let out a deep sigh of relief. His chances of ever flipping the script or getting out of this mess alive were officially absolutely zero. This wicked mother Zan-in-Zan-Law was clutching her phone, a brilliant smug smile plastered across her face. She was completely convinced her family's flawless, calculated plot had secured them a life of luxury. She had absolutely no idea that her grand, perfect little scheme had turned into a total public laughingstock. Right now, she was standing outside the rusty gates of their foreclosed family estate in Los Angeles. She was loudly bragging over the secure line to her arrogant son, Cole, who was locked inside a cell. Cole spoke through the static, telling her to stay calm and not panic, saying everything was fully prepared. He mentioned his secret mistress. Chloe was already on a flight to New York City to arrange her backup plan. In Cole's small mind, Serena's simple intelligence was completely beneath his notice, a toy he could manipulate. He wasn't just planning to dump a heavy 5 million Zen dollar liability entirely on Serena's shoulders in court. He was actively hallucinating about escaping the country to Switzerland with his hidden 10 million dollar cash stash. He wanted his greedy family to live in pure luxury while leaving Serena's father completely bankrupted and ruined. But Serena had seen through their blood Zan-sucking, parasitic intentions right from the very first move. Across town, inside a private high Zan end corner office, Mr. Vance was moving his legal chess pieces with precision. His elite defense team handed over a flawless, closed Zanlu paper trail of Cole's fraud straight to Detective Zhang. Their star witness, Mia, stood firmly by the desk, swearing on the record that every financial file was solid. Right as Detective Zhang was crossed and checking the ledger data with federal records, his phone buzzed violently. An urgent alert came through from the tracking unit, intercepting a massive, unauthorized offshore wire transfer. The agents acted in a split second, executing a freeze order on the entire account before a single dollar moved. Knowing Cole's grand financial escape route had been cut down to absolute zero, Serena turned to her lawyer. She calmly asked Mr. Vance how many decades Cole would pull when all these heavy charges hit him at once. Mr. Vance pushed his gold Zan-rimmed glasses up his nose, offering a flat, stone Zan cold reply that cut the air. With corporate fraud, international money laundering, and grand extortion, he's looking at 15 years minimum. This meant by the time this proud, self-Zan-centered husband finally stepped past the heavy iron gates of federal prison, he would be nothing but a broke-hollowed Zan-out old man over 50, with absolutely nothing left to his name. Serena let out a sharp, elegant smile, knowing a slow, agonizing prison life was way worse than death for him. But inside his dark holding cell, the delusional Cole still had absolutely zero clue about the world outside. He took another recorded call from his hysterical mother, listening to her scream about the foreclosed house. She was crying and cursing Serena's name, but Cole maintained his untouchable, toxic boss attitude. He scoffed into the receiver, telling her the ultimate winning card was still locked tightly in his hand. He was completely convinced his cash was sitting safe and sound under a secret alias in a Swiss vault. He had no idea Mr. Vance's forensic accounting team was dissecting his hidden flash drive 20 Zan4 Zan7. They were tracing every single shadow transaction line by line, mapping out his underground network. Cole had been running a highly organized offshore laundering operation through Chloe's networks in Vegas. He used his corporate signature to execute fake, inflated contracts with a web of shell companies. He disguised massive company funds as legitimate Project Down Zan payments, wiring them over to Chloe's accounts. The cash was then systematically washed through high Zan stakes casino chips at private tables before hitting Switzerland. In just 12 short months, this man had secretly bled his company and his father Zan-in-Zan-Law of over $10 million. Even Mia looked at the final audit sheets with pure disgust, shocked he would abandon his own baby for a check. But the endless party was officially and legally over for the cheating, fraudulent husband. Detective Zhang walked back into the room, delivering the news that the Swiss accounts were frozen. The federal judge also signed a preliminary order ruling the 5 million bank loan belonged to Cole alone. Serena was cleared of all corporate liability, completely off the hook without owing a single penny to the bank. The second his holding time expired, an oblivious, arrogant Cole strutted out into the glass-walled visitor area. But the moment his eyes locked onto Serena, Mr. Vance and the traitorous Mia standing together, his jaw dropped. He lost his temper instantly, slamming his fists on the table and screaming that Mia had maliciously trapped him. Mia didn't hold back, snapping right into his face that she was a complete fool to ever trust a pig like him. Cole scrambled for traction, trying to deploy one last desperate, threatening card to intimidate Serena. He barked that the creditors were about to seize her father's company if the loan wasn't paid by midnight. Mr. Vance stepped right into his space, delivering a cold, unyielding lecture on hide-and stakes corporate law. You executed that loan during your active affair solely to fund your private, unlisted shell businesses. It is classified as personal liability under the code. Stop trying to drag your wife into your criminal mess. Realizing he was completely defeated on the legal facts, Cole resorted to mocking her family's wealth. He laughed hysterically, claiming her family was too broke to afford a real, elite, white Zen collar defense firm. He bragged that his personal checkbook had secured the absolute best criminal defense attorney in the state. The marshal stepped up, locking the handcuffs tight and dragging the screaming, delusional husband away. Serena watched his desperate exit with a completely flat, emotionless, and detached expression. She was simply looking forward to trial day when he found out his luxury offshore safety nets were entirely empty. She couldn't wait to see the look of absolute soul-dang crushing despair on his face when the verdict hit. In fact, right before this final police station showdown, a wild scene exploded at the real estate agency. Serena was sitting quietly with a broker when her toxic mother in-law Mary marched through the doors. She brought along her pregnant new favorite, Chloe, both of them putting on an incredibly loud smug show. The moment Mary's eyes landed on Serena, she started throwing bitter, classless insults across the room. She mocked Serena loudly, telling the staff her family went completely bankrupt and had to liquidate their home. Chloe chimed in with a nasty laugh, bragging about how she easily bled Cole's pockets dry for her own gain. Serena just watched the two delusional, gold-digging women with a completely calm and analytical look. Mary then aggressively slammed her hand on the counter, demanding the agent show them their most expensive villa. The broker reluctantly pulled out the architectural blueprints for a massive multi-million dollar estate, but he maintained a strict, polite, professional smile, informing them that the luxury villa was unavailable. It had just been closed 10 minutes ago by a private cash buyer for a whopping $15 million. Serena stood up from her leather chair calmly, swirling her coffee cup before locking eyes with them. There's absolutely no need to look at those blueprints. Mary, I'm the one who just sold the estate. Hearing that 15 million dollar cash figure, Mary and Chloe completely choked on their breath. They stood frozen like stone statues right in the middle of the lobby, their faces draining of all color. Just then, a young kid holding a professional camera and a live dance streaming rig stepped out from the back corner. He announced to the room that his investigative channel had over 100,000 people watching live right now. Chloe panicked instantly, lunging forward to smash the camera lens to kill the feed before her name leaked. But the completely brainless Mary thought this was her golden chance to win the public relations war. She faked and cried straight into the camera, screaming that Serena was a cruel, heartless, and ungrateful child. She claimed Serena had locked her innocent husband away in a cell and thrown an old woman out onto the streets. Serena didn't flinch, stepping straight into the lens, looking dead into the camera to drop the absolute truth. She exposed Cole's endless trail of mistresses and how he systematically stole millions from her father's firm. She exposed his massive gambling markers at VIP tables in Vegas and his offshore money laundering network. Then, Serena pointed her finger straight at Chloe's face, labeling her as nothing but the second mistress in line. Chloe started sweating bullets right on screen, terrified her federal laundering ties were being broadcast live. But the absolute most brilliant, devastating twist was yet to hit the live stream audience. The young kid holding the camera rig wasn't just a popular independent investigative journalist. He was actually Mr. Land, the reclusive billionaire tech investor who just paid $15 million in cash. Mr. Land cut the live feed, stepped forward, and shook Serena's hand with immense professional respect. He told her the estate was worth $10 million max, but the extra 5 was a personal bonus from his firm. He called it a premium acquisition fee for providing the most legendary corporate takedown story of the year. Then, Mr. Land turned around, his eyes turning cold as steel as he told the 2 trashy women to get the hell out. Exposed in front of a massive national audience, Mary and Chloe completely lost their minds with rage. They threw a wave of desperate fake accusations at Serena before fleeing the office building in absolute shame. With the parasitic family permanently cut out of her life, Serena drove back to her family's massive estate. The exact second the 15 million dollar wire cleared, she transferred $5 million to stabilize her dad's firm. She joked over the phone with her father, telling him she was officially the primary shareholder of the business. From that day forward, she sat directly by her father's side in the boardroom, learning the corporate ropes. She completely mastered forensic auditing, complex financial data, and high-stakes corporate negotiations. She quickly realized she was never the fragile, clueless housewife Cole tried to convince her she was. She possessed an incredibly brilliant natural instinct for corporate warfare, strategy, and complex numbers. For 5 long years, she had wasted her rare intellect on domestic chores and managing a cheating husband. But now, she was actively investing every single ounce of her value into building her own independent empire. Serena pushed open the massive double doors of her new office, stepping out as a powerful corporate leader. Cole never could have imagined that his perfect multi-year plan would become his own federal arrest warrant. Inside the high-ceilinged courtroom, Serena stood tall and elegant. The massive financial corruption investigation had finally reached its absolute definitive climax. Inside the dimly lit, dusty interior of an abandoned industrial warehouse, Nora stood completely firm. Her posture was imposing as she looked down with an ice-stand cold glare at Chloe, who was trembling on the concrete floor. Chloe had completely lost her composure, her face turning a sheet-tan white shade as her body shook violently with fear. Nora didn't waste a single precious second on empty threats or regular corporate talk, cutting straight to the bone. Charles has completely lost his mind and is hunting for your head across the entire city right now to shut you up. And Madame Shaw has mobilized her entire shadow network to make sure both of you are wiped off the map tonight. Your absolute only survival card to stay alive right now is to hand over that encrypted flash drive to my team. If you turn state's witness today, I can personally guarantee you won't spend a single second inside a federal cell. Hearing the hard reality, Chloe's final psychological defense broke down completely into pure, unadulterated panic. She scrambled across the dirty floor toward the broken bed, her shaking fingers reaching under the stained pillow. She pulled out the micro flash drive containing the Hydzen level corporate data and pushed it desperately into Nora's hands. She wept hysterically, admitting through her tears that the drive held every single recorded phone conversation. It contained the absolute undeniable proof of how Madame Shaw paid off Charles millions to frame Nora for corporate espionage. The exact second he saw Chloe flip on his operation, Charles, who was pinned down against the brick wall, went wild. His facial features twisted with malice, and he started barking like a rabid, cornered dog at the top of his lungs. You backstabbing, ungrateful bitch. How dare you sell my entire life out to them to save your own skin? Give me back that drive right now. That encrypted file is the only leverage I have left against the family. But Nora didn't even bother to turn her neck or give him a single glance, letting out a sharp, sophisticated laugh. Leverage. Charles, let's be real here. You don't even possess the baseline qualifications to be a scapegoat anymore. Right at that intense, heavy moment, Keith stepped through the broken doorway, radiating a wave of absolute dominance. He stood tall in his tailored suit, calmly ordering his security detail to release their grip grip on Charles's shoulders. He looked down at the bloodied, pathetic man like a god looking down at a broken street insect. Madam Shaw currently has hit squads combing through every block in Chicago just to secure your execution. Your only option to survive the night is to sprint back to your master and ask if she'll give you run Xanaway cash. Then his voice boomed through the empty concrete structure like a crack of thunder. Now get the hell out. The broken Charles scrambled out into the heavy rain, running for his life like a beaten alley dog. Keith slowly turned his head around, looking at Nora with an expression of intense affection and unconditional trust. Go ahead, my love. Go make the toxic, stagnant waters at Apex Group a whole lot muddier for them. The next morning, the city of Chicago witnessed the most explosive, historical corporate media event of the decade. Nora and Keith stood shoulder to shoulder on the main stage, facing a massive army of aggressive reporters and cameras. The room was filled with blinding flashes before a journalist stood up, throwing a razor's and sharp question. Miss Nora, your federal filing explicitly states there is a venomous snake laundering billions inside the firm. A lockdown on every airport and transit hub in Illinois. Not a single individual connected to Charles's offshore accounts is stepping past the border of this city alive. And if anyone inside the Shaw family tries to interfere with this case, I will remove them from the board this exact second. The perfectly executed iron Xan-clad trap deployed by the powerful couple completely panicked the ultimate mastermind. Inside a heavily armored luxury sedan navigating the stormy streets, a lead enforcer was reporting to Madam Shaw. His hands were shaking violently as he looked at the grim, pale face of the aging matriarch. Ma'am, the situation has completely fallen apart. Charles has been locked up by federal detectives in a cell. Keith has locked down every single private hangar and exit point. Our extraction team is completely stuck inside the city. Madam Shaw gritted her teeth, her fingers violently turning her expensive prayer beads inside her palms. Her aristocratic face twisted into an expression of pure, ugly rage that looked entirely inhuman under the dim car lights. She slammed her fist against the back of the leather seat, cursing out loud with absolute venom. A bunch of useless, incompetent trash. I have spent millions on their legal defense and bail fees over the years. And you're telling me you can't even successfully eliminate a single regular schoolgirl, with pinned her body down with his full weight, drawing a sharp hunting knife straight against her jugular vein. He demanded she sign the money Xan laundering guilt and hand over the master backup pen. He brandished the blade right before her eyes, roaring at the top of his lungs like a complete psychopath. Are you going to hand it over or not? If you don't sign, you can go straight to hell along with your files. Right at that exact life Xan and Xan death second, Keith and Nora kicked the heavy wooden doors open with authority. Their elite security team swarmed the room in a flash, tackling the stunned killer and pinning him flat to the floor. But an even more massive, magnificent string of Lanhuan Fandran was about to hit the streets of Chicago. The next afternoon, Charles was walking down a secluded block, clutching his bruised, bleeding stomach in pure pain. He looked physically broken and pale as a ghost, but his greedy mind was still running its calculations. He was entirely convinced that as long as he held the threat of the recordings, Madam Shaw would bail him out. He muttered bitter curses into the empty air, convinced his underworld connections made him untouchable to schoolgirls. Just then, a black sedan pulled up smoothly by the curb, and Madam Shaw's top enforcer, Marcus, stepped out. Charles was completely ecstatic, quickly fixing his suit jacket and rushing over with a wide, sycophantic smile. Marcus, I knew the matriarch wouldn't leave me hanging. I knew my personal recordings would secure my freedom. Before he could even take another step toward the vehicle, two heavy thugs in floral shirts rushed out from an alley. They grabbed him forcefully by his lapels and unleashed a brutal bone-crushing beatdown right on the sidewalk. They slammed his fragile body onto the concrete, kicking him repeatedly in the chest and face without an ounce of mercy. Charles was left pooling in his own blood on the hard asphalt, his teeth completely smashed out of his mouth. Marcus crossed her arms over her chest, her high heels clicking coldly as she stepped up to his bleeding head. She knelt down slowly, her eyes filled with absolute chilling contempt and zero human emotion. Madam Shaw didn't pull strings to temporarily get you out just to listen to your empty blackmail, Charles. You take her 7 Zan figure payroll, you keep your mouth shut, and you take the full fall for the laundering counts. If you ever try to use a voice file to threaten her empire again, I will personally bury you alive in a ditch. Staring at the sharp blade in her hand, and the massive thugs, the once arrogant Charles completely wet himself in terror. To save his miserable skin, he dropped flat onto his knees, like a beaten dog, begging hysterically for his life. He screamed his submission to Marcus through pure, hyperventilating panic, trying to secure his survival. I swear to Almighty God, tell Madame Shaw I will keep her name completely clean from the federal investigation. I've already set the trap. I'll use that stupid bitch Chloe as the sole scapegoat and murder her tonight to close the case. Marcus let out a dry, satisfied remark. Smart move. Then she turned around and glided back into the luxury sedan. Left bleeding out on the hot asphalt, Charles gritted his broken teeth, gasping heavily for air as the car drove off. Chloe, if your heart keeps beating past midnight, I'm a dead man. One of us has to go to the grave. But the long arm of federal justice misses absolutely nothing in this town. The narcissistic sociopath had zero clue that his entire existence was already being monitored. Inside a blacked Xan-out surveillance van parked just down the block, Nora and Keith were wearing high Xan-end headphones. They had just intercepted and recorded his entire psychotic, pre-Xan meditated homicide plot in real time. An enforcer reported with deep respect, "Boss, our audio capture is flawless. We have the tape of his intent to kill Chloe." Nora leaned back into her leather seat, watching the bleeding man through the tinted glass with a cold smirk. Madame Shaw is desperately trying to cut ties to save her own skin, and the rats are finally eating each other alive. Keith's eyes turned freezing cold like an Arctic storm, and he issued the final termination decree to his security unit. Put a permanent tail on Charles. The exact second his shadow moves toward Chloe's safe house, lock him down in cuffs. This time around, I am personally making sure every single one of these toxic scumbags goes straight to federal prison. Finally, the ultimate hammer of federal justice delivered its definitive crushing blow to the cartel. Inside the Hides and Rise corporate boardroom of Apex Group, a cornered, desperate Madame Shaw was losing all control. She slammed her manicured fists onto the mahogany desk, screaming at the board members like a complete lunatic. This entire case is a fabricated lie. I am the chairperson of this firm. None of you have the legal right to judge me. She was sweating bullets through her makeup, her face pale as ash as she forced a trembling Marcus to sign a document. She was desperately trying to execute a system Xan wipe to erase all the international money Xan laundering data from the mainframe. Right during her final, panicked scramble, the heavy double doors of the boardroom bounced open with a loud bang. A squad of federal financial detectives and armed agents marched into the room with absolute authority. The lead special agent flashed his badge, speaking with a flat, stones and cold tone that brought the room to a dead silence. Marcus, we have verified, airtight evidence of major corporate embezzlement and international money laundering. Walk with us. Hearing the words airtight evidence drop like a guillotine, the hesitant Marcus completely lost her remaining nerve. The exact second the lead detective's heavy hand touched her shoulder, she broke down crying hysterically. In absolute blind terror of spending her life behind bars, she tried to pull away from the officer's firm grip. She turned her frantic, teared and stained gaze straight toward Madame Shaw, screaming at the top of her lungs. No, it wasn't my idea. I didn't steal a single dollar, officers. I was only following her direct corporate orders. Ma'am, Madame Shaw, I executed every single wire transfer exactly how you told me to. You cannot abandon me now. Seeing the legal fire spread straight to her own chairperson's seat, the ruthless matriarch flipped the script in a flash. She pushed the crying Marcus away like a disease, her face turning entirely bloodless under the heavy lights. She shrieked at the federal agents, desperately trying to cover her own tracks and distance herself from the crime. Stop your lying, desperate mouth. I had zero corporate clue you were running an illegal laundering ring under my name. Special agents, take this corrupt corporate cancer out of my boardroom right this second. She's a thief. Watching her longtime master throw her under the bus so cold Xan-bloodedly after 20 years of service. Marcus snapped entirely. She stopped fighting, letting the marshals lock the heavy steel cuffs behind her back as she lost all sanity. As they forcefully dragged her out the double doors, she locked eyes with Madame Shaw, unleashing a banshee Zen-like scream. "You backstabbing, cold Zen-blooded snake. You were the one who authorized and structured every single offshore placement. The shell company accounts currently projected on that big screen belong directly to your private family trust fund. Every single tape Nora played in this boardroom is the absolute unedited truth of your operations. The washed cash is sitting directly inside your own offshore pockets. You will burn in a federal prison cell for this." Her cursed, desperate screams echoed down the long corporate hallway, leaving the remaining board members in absolute silence. Madame Shaw collapsed back into her leather executive chair, her face looking like old decaying ash under the lights. Cold sweat poured down her forehead as she muttered weakly, her voice completely drained of power. "It is a lie. It is a setup." Sitting directly opposite her, Nora crossed her arms over her chest, watching the elite matriarch's empire fall apart. A beautiful, dominant, and triumphant smile of absolute victory finally appeared on Nora's face. The long war against corporate corruption was officially over, and the female lead had claimed total dominance. Inside the glass boardroom of Apex Group, the Haidzan stakes battle for ultimate control reached its final climax. When the board members openly questioned the financial files, Keith stepped up and ripped away her final disguise. He proved on the spot with digital forensic records that every single document she presented was a total forgery. Madame Shaw panicked, trying to use her stepmother status and family heritage to suppress his authority. But Keith responded with absolute devastating corporate force, showing her zero familial mercy. He announced her immediate termination from the board, froze her entire asset portfolio, and handed her case to the feds. She tried to scream and argue, but Keith's gaze remained freezing cold like a winter morning. He knew her quote Zan unquote family act was just a toxic, calculated play to drain the company of money and power. To flip the script at the last second, the desperate Madame Shaw resorted to extreme theatrical plays. She faked an acute heart failure right in the mansion, tricking the traditional family elders into backing her position. The elders tried to use the multi-Zan billion-dollar family trust fund as leverage to force Keith to terminate Nora. Keith played along with their demands on the surface, but he had already arranged the ultimate counter-Zan move behind the scenes. He marched straight into her private bedroom with a team of elite medical experts and federal examiners. A rapid forced blood test completely exposed her sudden heart attack scenario as a total laughable fraud. Nora then stepped up, laying out the verified financial evidence on the table item by item for the elders. Madame Shaw had illegally used corporate cash to bribe the hospital staff and forge her entire medical history. Even the dramatic blood stain on the bedroom floor was analyzed and proven to be cheap synthetic market dye. Faced with the undeniable data Nora dropped on the table, Madame Shaw snapped entirely, losing her sanity. In a state of pure hysterical desperation to avoid a prison sentence, she threw herself straight down the heavy marble staircase. She tried to use the severe physical injuries to frame Nora for attempted murder, screaming hysterically for the police. But Nora and Keith just stood at the top of the landing, watching her dramatic performance with total detachment. Standing high above the stairs, Nora let out a mocking laugh at the bleeding woman on the floor. She made it clear across the room that she wasn't done watching her pathetic little reality show just yet. Keith remained entirely unbothered by her dramatic, desperate plays, ordering the guards to secure the perimeter. Madame Shaw's lifelong dream of Haidzan society dominance was officially shattered into absolute permanent dust. The internal family war exploded into the open, and the injured matriarch lay bleeding on the floor of the estate. She pointed a shaking, blood-stained finger, accusing Nora of trying to murder her to seize the firm. But Nora just watched her dramatic act with a detached, cold look, refusing to give her an audience. Keith stepped forward past the elders, delivering the final definitive legal blow straight to her face. Your entire medical file, including the toxicology report showing the fake substances, is already with the federal prosecutors. This meant her decades of absolute, unquestioned dominance over the family fortune were officially over under the law. While the broken Madame Shaw was still trying to stammer out out a pathetic excuse to the family elders, Nora calmly pulled out the hidden memory card she had concealed inside the living room's robotic vacuum. The video footage projected onto the screen laid out the ugly truth clearly for the entire room to witness. The quote-unquote attempted murder was nothing but a self-inflicted scam she executed to frame Nora. Seeing her final survival plot completely exposed to the family, the matriarch collapsed into a genuine medical crisis. With the corporate and family cleanup fully completed, Nora turned to Keith with a beautiful smile. She informed him that every single piece of data had been processed and logged with the authorities. The family and the corporation finally welcomed a long-lost, beautiful piece to their home and boardrooms. Over at the hospital, the cold words of the federal marshals ended the multi-year feud once and for all. Madam Shaw was formally placed under arrest for a cold case homicide dating back 20 years ago. On top of that, she faced a mountain of heavy federal charges for international money laundering and wire fraud. She would spend the remaining years of her miserable life behind concrete bars, paying the full price for her crimes. Keith looked out the massive glass windows at the morning sun, locking his hand tightly with Nora's warm fingers. He let out a long, relieved breath, speaking with a proud, peaceful smile that filled the room. Because we held our line and refused to compromise, we can stand here today with our heads held high, facing our future. Chloe used to be the star dancer of the community Zumba class, moving with effortless grace on the gym floor. Every single move she made was pure, unfiltered perfection, making her the undisputed center of attention. Everyone in the neighborhood loved her radiant energy, but no one expected her best friend, Amber, to be so bitterly jealous of her spotlight. Amber always smiled to her face, pretending to be her most loyal sister, but she harbored a dark, twisted hatred deep inside her heart. She waited patiently for the perfect moment to strike, then lured Chloe to a luxury downtown hotel under the pretext of a celebration. Even worse, Amber had already hooked up with a dangerous, greedy corporate scumbag named Chad. They secretly slipped a powerful, fast-acting drug into Chloe's cocktail while she was looking away for just a second. The moment the drug kicked in and Chloe passed out cold on the lounge couch, Amber coldly handed her helpless friend over to Chad like a piece of disposable property, walking away with a wicked smile. That brutal bastard Chad dragged Chloe straight into a dark hotel room further down the hall. He tried to force himself on her, thinking she was completely trapped and had become easy prey. Thankfully, the sheer panic woke Chloe's survival instincts up, and she began to fight back with every ounce of strength left in her body. She bit his arm hard, broke free from his tight grip, and dashed out into the hallway. She ran for her life down the long, empty hotel corridor, her heart pounding violently in her chest. Chad chased her like a wild animal, screaming filthy names and cursing at her for acting like a pure saint. Terrified, disoriented, and completely out of options, Chloe frantically pushed open a random hotel door just to hide. Inside that room was Ethan, the billionaire CEO of Harris Group, who had just been woken up by the loud noise outside. That night, driven by the lingering effects of the drug and a crazy twist of fate, they ended up sharing a passionate, unforgettable one-night stand. The next morning, before the sun even came up over the city skyline, Chloe gathered her clothes and slipped away quietly. When Ethan woke up and found the other side of the bed completely empty, he immediately ordered his top assistant, Ryan, to investigate. He wanted to track down this mysterious woman and find her real identity, no matter how much money it cost. But nobody could have guessed what happened 6 weeks later, when everything changed for the worse. Alone, broke and backed into a tight corner, Chloe stood in a cold hospital bathroom, staring at a positive pregnancy test in absolute shock and disbelief. 6 long years passed in the blink of an eye, completely changing the course of her life. Chloe was now making a living selling fresh fish at a busy Brooklyn open market to keep a roof over their heads. Her hands were rough from the ice, but she was proud to raise her sweet boy, Toby, all by herself. Toby was an incredibly smart, loving child who always tried his best to help his tired mother after a long day. But one afternoon, fate played a cruel joke on them when the ghosts of her past caught up. Amber and Chad suddenly showed up right in front of her fish stand, looking incredibly wealthy and arrogant. Chad was wearing a flashy leather jacket, having just been promoted to a regional manager position at Harris Group. The moment Amber spotted Chloe, her nasty, venomous attitude came out instantly without any hesitation. She pointed her manicured finger, mocking how dirty and smelly Chloe looked in her stained apron. She laughed out loud, saying Chloe looked like a pathetic piece of trash after all these years. Chad was even more arrogant, sneering at her with cold, hateful eyes. He mocked her for rejecting him back then, saying she now looked like a common street beggar who belonged in the gutter. Chloe stood her ground, looking straight into their eyes without showing a single shred of fear. She told them that earning honest money to feed her son was nothing to be ashamed of in this world. But those two psychos took their cruelty to a whole new level right there on the market floor, right in front of little Toby. They called him a trashy, fatherless bastard who didn't deserve to be alive. They humiliated Chloe, calling her a loose woman who gave birth to garbage on the side of the street. Chloe shook with rage, fiercely calling them out for drugging her and ruining her life 6 years ago. Chad didn't feel a single shred of remorse for the terrible crimes he had committed back then. Instead, he flexed his power as the new regional manager, demanding a $100,000 protection fee from her. He threatened to ruin her life completely and make sure her kid disappeared forever if she didn't pay up immediately. Chloe was pushed to the absolute edge, but a miracle was waiting around the corner for her. Over at a nearby coffee shop, the billionaire CEO Ethan was suffering through a forced blind date. His father was terminally ill, and his last wish on earth was to see his son marry and have a grandson. And by a crazy stroke of luck, his blind date happened to be Chloe, who brought Toby along because she could not afford a babysitter. The assistant, Ryan, looked over her file and raised an eyebrow at the weird paperwork. He asked why she wrote single when she clearly had a beautiful, intelligent 6-year-old child. Chloe didn't lie. She admitted the truth with complete honesty, looking proud of the boy she raised. Looking closely at Chloe's face, Ryan's heart skipped a beat as his eyes went wide with sudden realization. She looked shockingly identical to the beautiful woman from that fateful night 6 years ago. Just as the date got incredibly awkward, Ethan's phone started ringing loudly in his pocket. It was the hospital ward. His dying father was weeping desperately into the receiver. The old man cried, saying if he didn't see his grandson before he died, he wouldn't rest in peace. Ethan was a deeply devoted son. He couldn't bear to let his father leave this world with regrets. He looked across the table at Chloe and made a sudden desperate marriage proposal right then and there. He offered her a marriage contract to make an old man happy before his time ran out completely. He promised they would divorce once the act was over, and he'd pay her $1 million cash for Toby's future and to get the money to find the child's biological father. Chloe agreed to the deal. Little Toby innocently cheered, thinking this money meant they could finally find his real dad. They didn't waste a single second and rushed straight to City Hall to register their marriage. After getting their marriage certificate, Ethan brought them straight to the hospital VIP ward. The moment the old chairman saw the sweet, healthy boy, his face lit up with pure joy. His illness seemed to vanish instantly, and he held Toby's little hand tightly with what little strength he had. He begged them to throw a grand wedding and celebrate properly within the next 2 days. But this beautiful emotional moment was ruined by two snakes listening closely at the door. The greedy Uncle Richard and the wicked stepmother Priscilla were eavesdropping on the whole conversation. They immediately assumed Toby was just an actor Ethan hired to fool the old man for the multi-billion inheritance. Richard refused to let Ethan keep the throne, so he reached out to Amber for inside information. He dug into Chloe's past and confirmed she indeed got pregnant exactly 6 years ago. The two villains quickly put together a sinister plan to destroy the upcoming wedding day completely. They wanted to expose this fake grandson in front of the board, the media, and high society. They wanted to destroy Ethan's reputation completely, so they could legally steal the multi-billion-dollar empire. Manhattan Hotel was packed with elite guests from all over. The atmosphere was elegant, filled with beautiful classical music, white roses, and expensive champagne. Chloe looked absolutely breathtaking in a custom-designed, pure white bridal gown. She held Toby's little hand tightly as they slowly walked down the long red aisle together. Up on the stage, Ethan turned around to face his bride and froze entirely in his tracks. As she walked closer, her face, her eyes, her delicate posture became crystal clear to him. She was the exact same woman from that unforgettable night 6 years ago. Made his move on the stage. He wore a nasty smirk, stormed onto the stage, and aggressively grabbed the microphone from the host. He decided to launch his attack publicly in front of all the high-profile guests and investors. He began to humiliate Chloe with the most vicious, hateful words possible. He yelled that this woman was a fraud who got knocked up by a random beggar 6 years ago. He claimed she was a loose woman, and that Ethan brought a bastard child to trick the chairman. The stepmother, Priscilla, smiled wickedly from the crowd, pushing the guests to react angrily. She screamed for everyone to take out their phones, record the lies, and post them online immediately. Instantly, the entire room erupted into a storm of cruel whispers and judgmental finger-pointing. Poor little Toby started sobbing uncontrollably, hugging his mom's legs tightly for protection. He cried out, begging them not to hurt his mommy or beat her anymore. Chloe's tears streamed down her face, her dignity completely shattered in front of the whole world. Ethan was shaking with pure, unadulterated rage, yelling at his uncle to shut his mouth. Seeing Richard and Priscilla cornering the poor bride, the old chairman Harold lost his temper completely. He sat in the front row, trembling with absolute fury, pointing a shaking finger at them. He roared, calling them greedy monsters who didn't care about family or honor at all. Suddenly, the old man clutched his chest, gasping for air as his heart failed him from the stress. He collapsed right back into his chair from a sudden violent heart attack. The entire venue fell into utter panic and chaos, while Uncle Richard stood on stage laughing out loud. Right at that life-or-death moment, Dr. Evans burst through the main security doors. He was completely out of breath, yelling at the top of his lungs to stop the madness on stage. He announced that the official DNA paternity test results were finally here. The uncle snatched the envelope away from him, a condescending smirk on his face. He was ready to read it out loud to deliver the final fatal blow to Ethan's entire career. But the moment his eyes scanned the official document, his entire body paralyzed completely. His jaw dropped to the floor, and his eyeballs almost popped out of his skull in horror. The report stated in bold letters that paternity was confirmed with a 99.99% DNA match. Toby wasn't a street bastard, he was Ethan's real biological son and true heir to the fortune. Seeing the uncle completely frozen, the old chairman did something miraculous. He jumped right up from his chair, looking full of energy and completely fine. It turned out the old man was just faking the heart attack. He played along to force these two backstabbing vipers to show their true colors. The chairman walked up and delivered a brutal slap right across the uncle's face. He smiled proudly and told Ethan to introduce the young master to everyone. The uncle and stepmother were completely humiliated and ran away like defeated dogs. But the drama wasn't over yet, as some snobbish relatives in the crowd kept whispering nastily. They refused to accept a poor fish seller into their high society family, making rude comments aloud. Ethan, who didn't know the full story of that night yet, temporarily lost his mind from the stress. He looked at his crying wife and son, screaming in confusion at the whole situation. He publicly demanded to know if this report was somehow manipulated, causing another scene. Taking advantage of the chaos, a bitter aunt stepped up and slapped Chloe across the face. She screamed at Chloe, calling her a gold digger who needed to get out of their mansion. Feeling utterly betrayed and humiliated by the man she just married, Chloe couldn't take it anymore. She ripped off her bridal veil, threw the original contract check on the floor, and ran away. She took Toby's hand and sprinted out of the hotel into the heavy freezing storm outside. Ethan watched her run away, his heart breaking as he finally realized his terrible mistake. He roared in pain and instantly ordered his security to banish every toxic relative from the property. To find his lost family, Ethan went completely scorched earth against the entire world. He put out a massive global bounty of $100 million to whoever found them first. Meanwhile, on a freezing, snowy New York night, a heartbreaking tragedy was unfolding on the streets. Chloe was kneeling on the ice-cold pavement, shivering and covered in bitter tears. She looked at her sweet, freezing boy Toby, hating herself for being so powerless and broke. She couldn't even provide a warm shelter or a decent meal for her own flesh and blood. But little Toby stood bravely in front of his mother, shielding her from the biting wind. He screamed at the mocking bystanders, telling them not to say bad things about his mommy. He cried out that his mommy was the best, most beautiful mommy in the whole wide world. To pay for Toby's school tuition, Chloe had been working 14 hours a day in sub-zero weather. She pushed a heavy food cart to sell hot food, her hands severely frostbitten and bleeding. But the monsters just wouldn't leave them alone, tracking them down again through malice. Amber, dressed in expensive furs, walked up alongside Chad, who flaunted a thick gold chain. Chad smirked and kicked her food stand, demanding the $100,000 protection fee again. He mocked Chloe for trying to hide in another district to avoid paying his money. Little Toby tried to push Chad away, but the brute violently shoved the child into the cold snow. He called him a worthless little stray dog who didn't deserve to live in this world. Chad went completely ballistic, his face twisting into a demonic grin as he lost all control. He wrapped his thick, brutal hands around Chloe's neck, choking her right there on the frozen street. Chloe gasped desperately for air, her face turning pale as she choked out a warning about the police. That warning made Chad lose his mind completely, throwing a massive tantrum on the spot. With one powerful, vicious kick, he flipped their heavy food cart over into the gutter. All the hot food they spent all day preparing spilled onto the dirty, muddy snow, completely ruined. Amber just stood there with her arms crossed, laughing hysterically at Chloe's complete misery. She mocked her, saying she looked like the pathetic trash she always was destined to be. To make matters worse, Chloe's old loyal butler, Ryan, had arrived to help but was beaten down badly. His life-saving heart medication rolled away under Chad's heavy leather boot. Chloe actually knelt down on the ice, begging these monsters just to let her grab the medicine, but they only kicked her hands away, and Chad roared to his hired thugs to beat them to death. He laughed, shouting that he had enough money to take the blame for killing them both. Right at that terrifying life-or-death moment, a massive sound tore through the night sky. The loud, sharp screech of burning tires echoed as a fleet of 10 luxury black SUVs arrived. Dozens of elite bodyguards rushed out of the vehicles, clearing the entire area in seconds. Ethan, the billionaire tycoon, jumped out of the lead car, his eyes burning with absolute rage. "Step away from my family right now," he roared, a sound that shook the entire street. Seeing his beaten, bloody wife and son holding each other on the frozen ground, he went cold. Ethan's expression turned into something deadly terrifying and full of pure hatred. The arrogant Chad, Amber, and their thugs instantly recognized the richest man in the city. Their faces drained of color, their knees gave out, and they collapsed onto the snow, shaking. Right behind him, the old chairman Harold stepped out of the car, leaning heavily on his cane. Looking at the absolute mess and his bruised, bleeding grandson, he lost control completely. The old patriarch's eyes filled with a terrifying, murderous fury that chilled the air around them. He pointed his cane at Chad and Amber, delivering a chilling command to his men. He ordered them to dig 3 feet into the ground to destroy every single person involved. He screamed, asking who gave these animals permission to touch a grandson of the Harris family. He roared, asking if they all thought he was already dead and buried in the ground. The old man rushed over, pulling little Toby into his arms. Weeping tears of heartbreak, seeing a gash of blood on Toby's forehead, the old man completely snapped at his son. He raised his heavy cane and struck Ethan hard across his shoulders, screaming at him. He called him a useless boy for letting his own wife and child suffer like beggars. Ethan stood there and took the beating without uttering a single word of complaint. He knew he deserved it, turning around with his eyes filled with painful tears. He pulled a weeping, shaking Chloe into a tight, deeply protective embrace. He whispered that he was so sorry, promising to use his entire soul to make it up to her. He swore on his life that nobody in this world would ever make her cry again. Little Toby looked up, wiped his tears, and started jumping up and down with pure joy. He cheered that he finally had a daddy and that he wasn't a bad word anymore. To ensure Chloe's position was completely untouchable, the old chairman made a massive announcement. He gifted her a legendary flawless sapphire necklace and a 100-foot luxury super yacht. He handed her the deeds to a historic sprawling mansion and 30% of the entire corporate shares. He crowned her with the highest honor, wealth, and respect in the entire country. As for Chad, Amber, and those abusive relatives who caused the pain, they were stripped of their jobs, blacklisted globally, and sued into absolute bankruptcy. They were facing a slow, painful, and systematic destruction from the most powerful family. Finally, the long, dark storm had completely passed, leaving clear skies ahead. Under the warm, beautiful sunshine of Central Park, Chloe put on a magnificent dress again. She looked like an absolute goddess under the clear blue sky, smiling brightly. Holding the hand of her brilliant, laughing boy Toby, she stepped into the open square. She began to dance a beautiful, triumphant Zumba routine, just like old times. The crowd cheered loudly, the music played, and all the past trauma washed away in the wind. Ethan walked up, wrapping his arms around his wife and son, smiling brighter than ever before. The Harris family was... Can you even fathom it? Deep within this bustling city, there lies a hidden mystical shop that trades absolutely anything. Today, Julian, a spoiled rich kid from the massive Hayes group, stormed into the place. The deal he demanded on the spot was completely mind-blowing. He actually wanted to sell his own biological father's life. See, Julian's dad is the chairman, and he has been stuck in a coma at the hospital for a whole month. This toxic son wanted his inheritance, so he was praying for his dad to die, offering a 1% corporate stake as his betting chip for the trade. Hearing such a messed up request, Madame Shen looked at him coldly. Her text directly rejected his offer. Julian lost his mind with rage, pointing right at her face, demanding to know why she refused. Madame Shen calmly told him that while the shop trades everything, the person involved must sign the deal. Looking at the arrogant brat, she looked him in the eyes and said, "I won't sell your father's life, but I can gladly buy yours right now." Julian had never been insulted like this. He called her a pathetic little girl who didn't know her place and ordered his thick, Jan-necked bodyguards to trash the shop and grab her. But this stupid trust Jan fun baby had no idea who he was messing with. As the guards rushed her all at once, Madame Shen didn't even blink. She casually waved her hand, and a blinding golden energy blasted out from her palm like a bomb. With a massive, deafening crash, Julian and his entire crew flew backward across the room, slamming hard onto the floor in agony. In her mind, she revealed her secret. Her real name is Shen Meng, the true successor of the Star God. She had walked this earth for centuries, collecting cosmic star power through fair equivalent exchanges, and right now, she only needed 30 Zan 6 more star points to ascend and become a god. Right after Julian ran away, a loud engine roared outside. A luxury Maybach sedan with an exclusive custom plate pulled up right at the front door. Stepping out of the vehicle was Marcus, the biggest movie star in the entire country. Bystanders on the street stared, envious of his billionaire status. But some sighed with sadness, realizing that even a global icon can't beat time and sickness. Looking like a fragile old man now, Marcus walked inside with a cane, held up carefully by his bodyguards. Meeting Shen Meng, he didn't waste time. He cut straight to the point. He wanted to buy more years to live. Shen Meng looked him over and said, "This shop runs on fair exchange. The price of life depends entirely on how much it means to you. So for a billionaire like you, the cost will be an absolute fortune." But Marcus was terrified of dying, so money meant nothing to him anymore. He slammed his exclusive black card straight onto the table. "There is $8 billion here," he said, his voice shaking. "It is my entire net worth. I will pay every single cent just to stay alive." Seeing his desperate sincerity, Shen Meng nodded and accepted the deal. She pulled out a golden antique watch that glowed with mystical light. The moment Marcus placed his hand onto the ticking watch, lightning flashed inside the room. A massive rush of golden energy wrapped completely around him, and the watch hands began to spin backward at a crazy speed. Then, a literal miracle happened. The age spots and deep wrinkles vanished from Marcus's face. His white hair turned pitch black, and within just a few seconds, he aged backward by 10 whole years. Feeling the young blood in his veins, Marcus punched the air excitedly, tears of pure joy running down his face. He bowed deeply to Shenmeng, promising that if she ever needed help anywhere in New York City, he would cross oceans for her. Marcus left, full of gratitude, and a new star point formed right in Shenmeng's hand, leaving only 30 Zen 5 to go. Before she could even take a breath, the heavy doors swung open again. A middle Zan-aged couple walked in, carrying their skinny, pale daughter, a young girl named Chloe. Chloe dropped straight to her knees, begging Shenmeng through tears. "Please make me gain weight. I will pay any price at all just to put meat on my bones." Her mother wept, explaining the story. Her daughter was obsessed with being thin, eating only half a bowl of food a day until she triggered a fatal illness. Now she desperately needed surgery, but she weighed barely 70 pounds. The doctors warned them plainly that if she went under the knife, she would leave in a coffin. Chloe grabbed the scales, screaming, "Madam Shen, I want to live. I don't want to die yet." Shenmeng let out a heavy sigh. Gaining weight was easy for the shop, but the rule of fair exchange stood. Chloe had been destroyed by sickness, and the only valuable thing she had left was her stunning, beautiful face. Hearing she had to trade her looks, the mother tried to stop it, but the father held his wife tightly, crying as he convinced her, "As long as our baby lives, it doesn't matter what she looks like." Facing the raw terror of death, Chloe cried and agreed to the trade. Shenmeng chanted a mystical spell, placing a piece of glowing golden meat straight onto the cosmic scales, and handed Chloe a bronze mirror. The moment Chloe touched the scale, the golden light flared up, and the weight numbers spun wildly. A massive surge of life force poured into Chloe's thin body. Her frame instantly became heavy, and her pretty face turned completely plain. As the light faded away, Chloe shook as she lifted the mirror, staring at her new, heavy reflection. She didn't cry at all. Instead, she touched her stomach, screaming with absolute joy, "Mom, look at my face. I actually got fat." Her parents hugged their daughter, crying tears of pure relief, thanking Shenmeng over and over. Shenmeng looked at her seriously. "This is a fair exchange. You kept your life, but you lost your beauty forever. You must live with this face now. But with this physical strength, you will survive your surgery tomorrow." The family left to start over, and another perfect star point merged into Shenmeng's hand. Right after Chloe left the shop, a heavy Zanset girl named Amber entered, looking as big as a mountain. But completely opposite to Chloe, Amber was crying and begging to get rid of 100 pounds. Shenmeng was quite surprised. "Why do you hate your body so much?" Amber closed her eyes and painful memories rushed back. She was back on the school court, blushing in front of the whole crowd, holding a love letter and hot coffee for the school golden boy, Chad. But Chad utterly humiliated her. He disgustingly knocked the coffee away, spilling hot milk all over the floor, and pointed right at her nose. "You think a fat pig like you stands a chance with me? I would rather stay single forever than date a disgusting whale like you." The surrounding students didn't care. They just gathered around, laughing loudly at her face as she covered her eyes and wept. The flashback ended, and Amber was sobbing uncontrollably. She said that cruel nickname was like a permanent scar on her, and people crushed her dignity daily. She wanted to wear pretty dresses, walk down the street with pride, and show everyone who hurt her that she could be beautiful too. Seeing the broken girl, Shenmeng decided to grant her wish. She used her powers again, extracting 100 pounds of fat and placing it onto the scales. A brilliant light wrapped around Amber, and right before her eyes, the heavy girl began to transform. When the light finally went out, standing there was a gorgeous goddess, tall, stunning, and absolutely flawless. Shenmeng smiled at the new Amber. According to the laws of the shop, this weight is worth $100. Amber stared at her perfect reflection, completely losing her mind with joy. She handed over $100 Zan bill, said thank you a million times, and ran off toward her new life. Shenmeng put the money away, looking at the front door with a sigh. Most extra weight in this world is just built up from heartbreak. Losing it means making peace with your painful past. The star power in her hand flashed, leaving 30 Zan 5 points to go. Suddenly, the quiet air shattered. The heavy doors were kicked open with brutal, terrifying force. It was Julian, the shameless rich kid who had been blasted out earlier. He had found a dangerous new weapon, and he stormed back inside, his face twisted with pure malice. He screamed at the top of his lungs, "Madam Shen, I am back for a deal, and this time I am selling a life." What kind of power did he bring? Facing this dangerous challenge, how would Shen Meng use her rules to deliver his final total destruction? As the master of the shop, Shen Meng could see the price of everything, and as she gained her star power, two very different deals began. At the hospital, Chloe's surgery was a complete and total success, but that was just a small story. Soon after, a brilliant scientist, Professor Arthur, who was terminally ill, came to see Shen Meng with his assistant. He spent his life working on green energy, but regretted leaving his work unfinished. To pass down his life's work, he offered his secret research journal, asking Shen Meng to find a genius named Ryan to take over. Shen Meng pulled up Ryan's file. He was working on a dirty construction site, getting yelled at by his boss, but still dreaming of science. Shen Meng appeared before him, offering the chance to change his life. Meanwhile, a young woman named Elena was living in an absolute nightmare, drained constantly by her toxic mother. Her brother got into massive gambling debt, and instead of stopping him, the mother threatened Elena, demanding cash to save his life. Unable to take the stress anymore, Elena walked into the shop. She chose to sell her family bond, cutting the heavy chains of guilt. Shen Meng warned her coldly, "Once this deal is done, your love for them will vanish. Even if they end up on the street, you will feel absolutely nothing." To escape that blood Zan-sucking family, Elena signed the paper without fear. When her phone rang again with her mother screaming for money, Elena was no longer a victim. She calmly told her no and said goodbye to her past forever. Deep in a quiet corner of the city, there sits the mysterious shop. The owner, Shen Meng, understands the deep obsessions of human nature. Whether you bring priceless antiques or your entire professional career, the scales can grant any wish. A wealthy businessman named David walked in with a historic porcelain bowl valued at $50 million. But he didn't want more wealth. He wanted true family love. This deeply surprised Shen Meng because most people came to her to sell their family burdens. But David was doing the opposite. Under the magical power of the shop, David's buried memories woke up. He remembered being lost as a child. Though he found his birth parents later, they had sold their old home and worked through sickness for him. The guilt made him feel completely numb, distancing himself from them. Shen Meng's words broke his shield. "It's not that they don't love you. You built a massive wall in your heart made of fear and insecurity." With Shen Meng guiding him, David finally found the courage to call his childhood home. "Mom, I'm coming home for dinner," he said, his voice soft, finally making peace with his past. At the exact same time, a broken tech founder named Maya stumbled into the shop. To escape her severe depression, she wanted to trade 3 years of her successful corporate career for just 3 months of pure joy. Shen Meng offered her the choice, but revealed the brutal truth of life. True happiness can never be bought with drugs or money. It only comes from accepting the reality of your life. Inside this mysterious shop, everyone is trading their deepest regrets. Some drop their heavy burdens, some find their true path. But in all, the man you see right now is Lucas. He is showering the HR manager with a million thanks over his phone, his voice shaking with absolute disbelief. He just received his official promotion letter through his company email. He is finally a department head now, and his monthly salary has instantly doubled. Lucas was losing his mind with pure excitement, his eyes welling up with tears. He turned around to thank the mysterious woman dressed in elegant traditional clothing, Madam Shen. "You see, this is no ordinary boutique. This is the mystical shop of everything. And Madam Shen is the absolute master of this sacred space." She looked at him with an expressionless face and said calmly, "Don't thank me for this sudden fortune. It was your own steady hard work and raw courage that proved you were worthy of this bright future." Right after Lucas left the shop to celebrate, Madam Shen looked at his trading token left on the counter and couldn't help but sigh. Buying a future with cold cash is never a cheap shortcut or a magician's trick. It's a lifetime of silent hustle and sleepless nights finally getting its due reward from the universe. The moment she finished her sentence, a loud, wealthy businessman kicked open the heavy front doors. He wore a thick gold chain around his neck and a flashy Rolex on his wrist, looking like a total high roller who owned the city. His name is Victor, a loud, arrogant millionaire who got filthy rich from the concrete and building materials business. He shouted the very second he walked into the room, "I heard a wild rumor that this shop can trade literally anything in existence. Tell me, is that crazy rumor actually true, or is this just a scam?" Before Madame Shen could even answer his rude question, the scene flashed back to the exact moment when Lucas first found this place. Madame Shen had looked at Lucas very clearly and laid down the law. Every single trade inside these walls requires an equal price. If you want a successful career, it depends entirely on what the cosmic scales demand. She asked Lucas what he was willing to give up forever. Lucas slammed his black credit card onto the wooden table, gritting his teeth as he spoke through his pain. "Money is all I have left in this miserable world now. There is $200,000 on this card, which is my entire life savings. I even had to mortgage half my house just to clear the balance and get it ready." Lucas looked at her with bloodshot eyes, his voice breaking. "As long as you can help me climb the corporate ladder and get what I deserve, I will give you every single cent without looking back." Madame Shen looked deep into his soul and asked, "Are you absolutely sure about this trade? Can your mind handle the final consequences of this pact?" Lucas nodded his head aggressively, his knuckles turning white. He began to let out his years of buried corporate pain and anger. "I have slaved away at that desk for 10 miserable years. My name is always at the very top of the promotion list, but because I don't have an elite backup or a wealthy family, those connected brats always steal it from me at the last second. I am sick and tired of my wife's daily complaints about our bills. I am sick of being laughed at by successful relatives during the holidays. I refuse to be an invisible ghost at the office anymore. I just want a fair fighting shot at a real life." Madame Shen didn't say another word to him. She accepted his credit card and told him to place his hand onto the golden key sitting on the scales. As the cosmic scales became perfectly even in the dim light, the mystical deal was instantly locked into place. Right at that exact second, Lucas's cell phone started buzzing violently in his palm. It was the HR director calling him personally to offer him the executive position. The trade had worked its magic instantly, changing his life forever. The camera cuts right back to the loud and impatient Victor. Having witnessed the true, undeniable power of the shop, Victor threw down $500,000 in cold cash to use as a down payment. He beat his chest proudly and made a loud, desperate promise. "If you can get this business deal done for me, I will gladly give you half of my entire real estate empire." But Madame Shen pushed the stack of cash right back to his side, saying to him with a cold, piercing voice, "We only do fair, equal exchanges here. We will settle the bill only after the work is completely finished." To find the perfect product for Victor's strange request, Madame Shen visited a quiet, peaceful garden hidden away in the mountains. Inside the stone yard, a very elegant young man was fully focused on playing a classical zither. His name is Julian. Madame Shen stood under the bamboo trees listening closely, praising his music for being so incredibly pure. It was like a rare flower untouched by the dirt of the world, representing true, effortless elegance and class. Julian stopped playing his music as the strings vibrated, looking up to ask why a stranger was here. Madame Shen revealed her real identity as a cosmic trader, telling him that a very wealthy man was offering a massive fortune just to buy his natural elegance. Meanwhile, back at the shop of everything, another happy woman was smiling and bowing, leaving through the front doors after making a highly successful deal of her own. The truth is, behind every single trade made on the golden scales, there is a heartbreaking story hidden away from the world. The scene flashes back to Lucas's first night in the shop again. He was holding a cheap liquor bottle, drunk and furious as he questioned Madame Shen if she could truly buy him a future, or if it was all a lie. Madame Shen tried to talk him down from his ledge, saying that career paths have their own cosmic reasons, and success cannot be created out of thin air. But Lucas was too angry and hurt to listen to her wisdom. A useless guy named Chad joined the company on the exact same day as me. He does zero real work and just sucks up to the big bosses every morning. But because his biological uncle is a high-level executive, executive. He is sitting in a department manager's office today. I do all the real work to keep the company alive, and now I can barely afford to pay my monthly mortgage. I am completely done with playing this unfair game, and I am willing to risk my entire life just to win for once. On the other side of town, Victor was revealing the true embarrassing problem behind his millions. He wanted to spend a massive fortune just to buy a sense of true, unbothered class. Victor looked incredibly bitter as he sat on the velvet sofa. Ever since I made my millions in concrete, those high society snobs at the country clubs look at me like I am a cheap, uneducated hillbilly. I spent 50 grand on a charity art show last week just to fit into their elite circle, but they talked trash right behind my back, calling me a tacky pig who is obsessed with money. One snobbish painter even told me to leave his gallery because my thick gold chain ruined his artistic vibe. I applied to join 3 different premium private clubs, and they blacklisted my name instantly. I don't want to fake it with fancy clothes anymore. I want true, deep elegance in my very bones, something that will force those snobs to respect me. Madame Shen told him that true class cannot be built out of thin air. She had to harvest it from a real, pure artist, telling a desperate Victor to wait patiently for 3 days. 3 days passed in a flash inside the quiet garden. Julian just hung up his phone with a happy smile on his face. Suddenly, an old man wearing a long traditional robe appeared in the yard out of nowhere, looking at Julian with a heavy sigh of disappointment. "You foolish boy," the old man said, his voice trembling. "You gave up your beautiful artistic soul just for worldly wealth, flashy cars, and cheap vanity. It is an absolute tragedy." Madame Shen stepped out from the shadows and argued back calmly. "A pure soul is a beautiful thing to see, but experiencing the comforts of the real world is also a valid path for a human being. This is an equal fair exchange made on the scales. There is no right or wrong in this room. There is only choice." The scene went right back to the shop. Victor was pacing around the couch like a caged animal, asking her the second she walked in if she found the prize. Madame Shen was totally relaxed and poised. She pulled out a glowing green stone from her sleeve, telling him that this item held the power of true elegance. The camera flashed back to the garden to show the dark truth. Madame Shen had used the cosmic scales to strip away Julian's elegance, while Julian received $200,000 in cash to fix his broken life and pay his debts. But without his artistic soul, Julian changed into a completely different man overnight. He looked at his beloved instrument in the corner with a face full of pure disgust and boredom. His phone rang, and he immediately started kissing up to a cheap corporate client with a fake smile. He said he was more than happy to change his musical style to play whatever trashy pop music was currently trendy. Hearing about a corporate party gig that paid $20,000, he accepted it without a single second of hesitation. That pure high-class musician had completely died, turning into a brainless money-making machine. Back inside the shop, Victor had absorbed the glowing green energy into his chest. He couldn't wait to try it out, so he immediately called his biggest business partner. He stopped using his usual loud, aggressive voice, trying hard to speak like an overeducated intellectual. But his old business friend didn't buy the act at all. He mocked Victor for acting so incredibly fake, saying his new poetic voice gave him literal goosebumps. The partner felt that this weird, quiet version of Victor was far too unpredictable to trust with the $1 million deal. He officially canceled their concrete contract and slammed the phone down instantly. Victor went completely ballistic, throwing a chair across the room. He fiercely cornered Madame Shen against the wall, yelling that she had scammed his hard-earned money. He spent a fortune to buy class, but it ended up destroying his actual business empire. Madame Shen looked at his red face, completely unfazed. The shop only guarantees a fair trade, not a happy life. Your loud, aggressive personality was your unique brand. This elegance is a major change for you, but to the rest of the business world, it just feels fake, awkward, and broken. As she spoke, his phone began to ring loudly again, flashing red. Another massive consequence was waiting for this rich man to handle, proving that every wish has a dark price. Inside this mysterious place, Madame Shen continued to watch the desperate desires of the broken humans walking through her door. A young corporate rookie named Chloe was always misunderstood at her job, her coworkers thinking she only survived on her good looks. To prove her real worth to the firm, she made a very dangerous choice on the scales. She traded away her flawless beauty for top-tier corporate intelligence and business strategy. After the deal was locked, Chloe transformed into an absolute powerhouse, shocking the executives at the board meeting and smashing all office stereotypes. The trading never stopped for a single day. A singer named Shuyo wanted fame fame more than anything, so she traded her beautiful singing voice for flawless, perfect physical beauty. A heavy-set man traded away his entire appetite just to lose 100 pounds, even if it meant losing his love for food forever. A dying professor named Arthur left his life's research to a smart kid named Ryan, who was stuck working a dangerous construction job. To achieve his lifelong dream of being a real scientist, Ryan traded his long-term freedom for the top-tier resources she provided. And a young woman named Elena, who was used as a human piggy bank by her family, chose to trade away her family bond after being drained by her toxic mother. She cut the painful chains of guilt, finally saving her own life from those monsters. As long as you are willing to pay the price, whether it's David wanting a true heart or Maya wanting her happiness back, Madame Shen can make it happen. David had lost his way in his youth, destroying his home and losing his parents to his bad habits. He brought the deed to his last family house just to buy a chance to clean up his life and get healthy. To protect his new beginning, he used the mental guidance she gave him to reject his old, dangerous criminal friends. After he fully recovered his health, he personally sent those drug dealers to jail. Meanwhile, a top student named Star was breaking down from academic pressure, triggering severe, life-threatening eating issues. She walked into the shop and traded her brilliant academic talent for a normal, healthy appetite. After that, her test scores dropped to the bottom, but she could finally eat a warm meal without feeling disgusted by the plate. Watching her study hard under her lamp, saying she would make up for the lost talent with pure time and dedication, people could finally see the power of hope. Under the watch of Being a pushover isn't about kindness, it is just pure terrifying cowardice. A young guy named Leo stood there pouring his heart out to Madame Avalon, the mysterious owner of the shop. Not long ago, Leo was the office doormat, the guy everyone loved to take advantage of. He never knew how to say no to people, staying up all night doing their spreadsheets, only for them to steal all his hard-earned credit. Even his manager thought he was too soft, dumping endless random chores onto his desk. Leo slaved away at that firm for months, but promotions always went to someone else. To make matters worse, his dating life was dead. His ex-Jan girlfriend, Fiona, dumped him coldly, calling him a boring, passive piece of wood. Looking at the broken, miserable young man, Madame Avalon spoke in a calm, soothing voice. Our shop runs strictly on equal exchange. If you want the burning drive to win, are you trying to fight for credit, or do you just want to take control of your life? Leo gritted his teeth, his eyes turning wild. I want it all. I want real ambition. Next time someone tries to push me around, I want the guts to bite back immediately. I want the world to finally see my worth. Looking at his aggressive, emotional face, Madame Avalon gave him a chilly warning. Ambition will definitely make you sharp, but it might turn you greedy and impatient. Are you absolutely ready for that dark side? I am ready. I don't care about the risks. Anything is better than living like a coward. Leo slammed his credit card onto the table, offering every single dollar of his savings. Madame Avalon casually waved her bare hand, though a golden medal of pure ambition appeared, floating in the air above the cosmic scales. She looked into his eyes and whispered softly, "The scales are our witness, an equal trade. This cash buys you a sharp defensive edge. It won't hurt others. It will only protect you. Place your hand on the steel, lock the deal." The exact second Leo touched the cosmic scale, a rush of gold energy poured into his veins. The funds cleared, and his eyes snapped open, every single shred of self-doubt vanishing, replaced by a cold, unstoppable confidence. He beat his chest, feeling a massive surge of power, promising to take back what belonged to him, before storming out into the city streets. Madame Avalon watched him leave, sighing quietly. Kindness only works when it has sharp teeth. The moment a changed Leo stepped into the hallway, Ta caught his lazy co-worker Charles messing with his computer. Charles didn't even bother to apologize to his face. He just smirked and dumped a massive quarterly report straight into Leo's hands, expecting him to do the work. If this was yesterday, Leo would have swallowed his pride. But today, Leo stared him down with an icy glare. "Why on earth should I do your job for you?" Charles froze on the spot, completely blown away. "Come on, man, you always do it for me," he stammered. Leo stood tall, his voice echoing through the office. "I used to be too weak to say no, but that ends today. Everyone here needs to handle their own workload instead of dumping their stress onto my back. Seeing Leo refuse to back down, Charles lost his temper, loudly accusing him of being a selfish jerk. Leo let out a cold laugh, ripping away his fake mask right in front of the entire office staff. Real co-workers help each other, Charles. You are just a parasite draining my energy. Last week, I stayed up all night on that pitch, but you lied to the manager saying it was yours. We still haven't settled that score, buddy. The whispers from the crowd made Charles panic. We worked on that together. He lied, shaking. Leo didn't waste another breath on his pathetic lies. The boss will know who did the work, he sneered, walking straight into Mr. Miller's executive office while the entire team watched him in absolute awe. Leo slammed the thick project file onto the desk, speaking to the manager with absolute confidence. Mr. Miller, here is the official project proposal. I conducted every single piece of data research alone. Charles only gathered a few basic files at the start. I demand the proper recognition for my hustle, though I want the lead role on this execution. Looking at the flawless, detailed presentation, Mr. Miller was deeply impressed by Leo's new energy. Once he confirmed Leo did all the heavy lifting, the manager smiled and made a firm promise on the spot to nominate him for the top quarterly bonus. Leo bowed politely, walking out with his head held high. Back in the hallway, his cell phone buzzed violently, flashing his ex-gen girlfriend Fiona's name on the screen. Fiona had heard rumors about his massive transformation, but her voice sounded filled with regret and hesitation, begging him to meet up over dinner to talk things through. But Leo's heart had already turned into solid stone. He let out a cold, cynical laugh into the receiver. People change, Fiona. I used to think playing nice would bring me peace, but now I only live for myself. I fight for what I deserve and I don't settle. There's no need to meet. The past is dead. He hung up the phone without a single shred of regret, walking forward into his bright new life. Leo won his battle against his weak past, but there were still countless broken souls out there, drowning in misery, waiting for a savior. A second later, the heavy boutique doors opened again. A broken small business owner named Kevin stumbled inside. His face was pale, his expression completely frantic. He crawled to the counter, pulling out a family photo, begging Madame Avalon with tears streaming down his face. Madame Avalon, please, I am begging you on my knees. Can you save my beautiful little boy's life? Madame Avalon looked at him, completely unmoved. The shop only operates on fair, equal exchange. What are you trying to buy, and what can you offer? Kevin wept bitterly, revealing his dark, secret past. 3 years ago, driven by pure greed and pure pressure, he walked into an underground casino for the first time. He started small, thinking it was just harmless fun. But once you touch that dark world, greed takes over. He went from hundreds to thousands, losing control completely until he drained his family's entire life savings, mortgaged his only shop, and ended up owing millions to some very dangerous, heartless loan sharks. Now Kevin was completely trapped with nowhere to run. Just this afternoon, those vicious thugs surrounded his house. The leader, a psycho named Scarface, gave him an ultimatum. If he didn't bring $5 million within 3 days, they would snap his 5-year-old son Toby's arms right in front of his eyes like a cheap toy. Thinking of that terrifying threat, Kevin shook with fear. The worst part was that his sweet wife Sarah, his elderly mother, never said a single harsh word to him. Sarah worked 2 jobs during the day to support him, sewing clothes late into the night just to save a few pennies. But $5 million was an impossible mountain. Kevin screamed in complete heartbreaking despair, knowing that even selling his own organs wouldn't save them. He looked at Madame Avalon with bloodshot eyes. If you give me the money to keep my family safe, I will do absolutely anything you ask of me. Then, what are you willing to put on the scale? Kevin lowered his head, his voice sounding completely dead. My happiness. The moment he said those words, the cosmic scales glowed. Oh, a beautiful token of joy appeared on the silver tray, sparkling with the pure essence of human warmth. Madame Avalon looked at him, her face incredibly serious. If you sign this contract, you will get the check, but those dangerous thugs will leave your family alone. But in return, you will lose the ability to feel anything. You will never cry again, and you will never never smile. The love of your family will feel like nothing to you. You will live your life like a cold, mindless robot. Are you absolutely sure you want to make this trade? Lock it in. Kevin cried, his tears finally running dry. As long as my wife and baby get to stay alive, I don't care if I become a walking corpse. It's better than watching my baby boy get broken. Madame Avalon looked at him one last time and stopped arguing. She pulled an antique silver watch from her velvet sleeve, placing it onto the other side of the scale as a weight. As the magic began, Kevin held his hand over the altar, closing his eyes to say a silent prayer to his family. Sarah, Toby, I am so sorry. This is my only choice to keep you monsters away from our home. The moment his palm pressed down, a gold fire erupted, burning across the scales, sealing the dark pact. The scales balanced out, and Kevin opened his eyes. His entire expression had completely transformed. The human sadness, guilt, and terror vanished instantly, replaced by a terrifying hollow numbness. He reached out and took the 5 million dollar check, his phone buzzing with the bank confirmation text. Madame Avalon looked at the emotionless man and whispered, "With this fortune, your family is safe forever." Kevin thanked her like a machine, turning around blankly. Armed with the check, Kevin walked back to his apartment. Inside, Sarah and his mother were crying, holding Toby. Kevin just stood at the door with his suitcase staring. There was no joy on his face, no love for his family, looking as cold and unbothered as a block of ice. A relative who came to help couldn't take his silence, pointing a finger at his face, cursing him for his gambling. Faced with the insults, Kevin didn't even blink. His poor wife Sarah finally broke down completely. She held her sobbing child tightly against her chest, walking up to this stranger who used to be her husband. "I can't do this anymore, Kevin. For Toby's sake, I think we need to get a divorce," she whispered. No matter how hard she cried, Kevin felt absolutely nothing. His face remained blank without a single shred of emotion. He traded away his own soul to save their lives, but he could never give them love ever again. Inside the shop, Madame Avalon stared at the token of joy, letting out a deep, sorrowful sigh for the human race. Giving up your soul to save your family sounds noble, but a protector without warmth makes a home feel cold. Right then, the heavy doors opened with a loud thud. A pair of expensive leather shoes walked inside. A powerful middle-aged man stepped into the light, radiating pure authority. It was the billionaire Gary. A mysterious smile played on his stern face as he spoke. "Madame Avalon, I heard rumors that you trade anything here." She cleared the sadness from her eyes, looking up calmly at the massive tycoon standing right in front of her. "We trade everything. Gary, what is your desire? What kind of dark secrets did this powerful billionaire bring into this mystical shop? What price would he pay?" Once a billionaire, Gary looked at his empty bank account, feeling a strange sense of freedom from his golden chains. He traded away his very last shred of human courage just to get a fighting chance to face his past crimes. While Madame Avalon collected star power to become a goddess, Gary walked into the streets alone to start his redemption. He tracked down Nina, the daughter of his old partner. In front of the crowd, the former billionaire bowed deeply, his voice shaking as he confessed his ancient betrayal. His greed had driven Nina's father to jump from a building, shattering her family and leaving them completely broke. Facing his sudden confession, Nina's mind went totally blank, remembering how her father used to call Gary his brother. To pay for his sins, Gary gave her his remaining pension, volunteering to work at her charity doing hard labor, sweeping floors and moving boxes just to earn forgiveness. Seeing his genuine tears, Nina finally chose to let it go, not because she forgot the pain, but to free her own soul. She gave him a job, but warned him to follow every rule inside the shop of everything. Nothing comes without a cost. The rich man from earlier traded his empathy for peace, meaning he could never feel another human's pain again. At the exact same time, a broken girl named Fiona arrived. She had been tortured by her toxic ex, Hudson, for 7 years. Hudson slept with her best friend and gaslit her daily, leaving her completely shattered and full of self-doubt. Whenever Hudson showed up, she had to run to the shop for safety. Fiona's request was simple. She wanted to trade her memory for a chance to completely forget his existence. Madame Avalon warned her seriously about the high price. If I wipe your mind, the trauma will vanish, but the beautiful moments will be erased forever. But Fiona was already dead inside from the endless mental drain. She completed the trade through the mystical crystal ball, completely wiping Hudson from her mind for the rest of time. When Hudson blocked her path on the street the next day, Fiona looked at him like he was a total stranger. Hudson tried to talk his way back into her life, but tripped over a trash can and fell face down first into the dirt. Fiona didn't even look back, walking into the sunshine, feeling the heavy stone in her chest vanish completely. Every single ending in the shop is just a beautiful rebirth. Whether it is Gary's redemption or Fiona's clean slate, they all paid a heavy price to get their lives back. But at the end of the road, they finally found freedom. Faced with her co-workers' rude comments at the office today, Rachel's peaceful reaction was completely shocking. A woman named Linda mocked her presentation on purpose, but Jack brought over a spreadsheet trying to pick a fight. But Rachel didn't lose her temper or get upset at all. She just smiled, thanked Jack, and promised to fix it. The camera cuts to the hidden shop of everything, where a little orphan boy named Sammy touched the scales. A beautiful pink light poured into his little chest, but Sammy blinked his eyes, thinking nothing happened. Madame Avalon smiled softly and patted his head gently. A mother's love isn't a quick magic trick, Sammy. It is a quiet warmth hidden deep inside your daily life. The second she finished, Miss Higgins from the shelter ran in, holding Sammy's hands, crying out with amazing news. A wealthy couple saw his file and fell in love with him, loving how he collected plastic bottles to save money, who always tutored the younger kids at the orphanage. They made the decision to adopt him right then and there. Sammy was shocked, asking if they would love him like a mom. Back at the corporate office, the mystery was finally solved. Linda couldn't take it anymore, asking why she was so calm. Rachel took a deep breath and smiled at her frustrated face. I used to be so stupid, overthinking every single word, destroying my own mental health just to please people. I am completely done with that exhausting game. I eat well, I sleep like a baby, and my peace comes first. So what exactly did little Sammy trade away in that shop? An hour earlier, he crawled onto the counter with his hands, pulling out a few crumpled bills from his tiny pockets. It was $100 he saved over 2 weeks. He wanted to use his savings to buy a mother's love. Madame Avalon asked him if he knew what a mother was, so the little boy looked up at her with innocent eyes. The kindergarten kids say a mom cooks you hot dinner, tells you to put a coat on, and holds you at night. I just wanted to know what that felt like for once. His pure heart touched her soul, and the scales glowed, creating a pink crystal filled with the purest motherly love. Right after Sammy left, a billionaire named Robert walked in. He owned dozens of firms, but looked completely dead inside. For 3 years, he hadn't slept a single full night, his expensive steaks tasting like cardboard in his mouth. He threw his black card down, offering $100 million just to buy back the pure joy he felt as a little kid. Madame Avalon placed a green gemstone onto the scale. Once you taste this joy, you will lose your adult shield. You might do things that don't fit a billionaire lifestyle. Robert laughed bitterly, saying he was sick of his fake mask, placing his hand onto the altar without a single regret. A flash of gold light went off, and Robert gasped, feeling the tight knot in his chest snap after 20 years. Looking at the happy man, Madame Avalon handed him a photo. Take that $100 million and rebuild Sammy's orphanage. Go be the director there and look after those kids. That is how you protect your joy and change their future. Robert looked at the poor orphan boy in the picture, realizing it was the best money he had ever spent. With Robert's massive deal locked in, the glass jar filled up, Madame Avalon collected her final point of cosmic power, transforming back into the stunning, glorious star goddess. At the end of the story, Sammy waved goodbye to the shop inside his new home. His adoptive mom, Mary, gave him new clothes, but his dad, Paul, brought him a warm glass of milk. Mary fed him a fresh strawberry, whispering to him gently, "I am your mommy now, sweetie. You are safe with us." Sammy's eyes filled with tears as he smiled up at her. The love he bought with $100 was beautiful. It tasted sweeter than anything else in the entire world.